Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Breckland Planning for today. My name's Councillor Nigel Wilkin. I'm Chairman of the Planning Committee. And first of all, I'd like to just go through what we class as our general housekeeping. That's it, guys. Come on in. There's room at the front. First of all, fire exits. Our fire exits are quite clearly marked. That's these two doors here. There's another one on the end of the corridor where the lavatories are, and of course the door that you came into the building to start with. I've got no tests down for today, so if the alarm goes off, we will treat it as genuine and we will vacate the building and congregate in the car park. If you're not sure what's happening or where to go, just follow this lot because they'll be out before anybody else, I can promise you. Phones and mobile devices, could I ask you to, I'm glad I'm saying that because I haven't done mine, switch your phones to silent or switch them off. If you do decide that your business life and your phone is more important than my meeting, when it makes a noise and disturbs, it will be a £10 fine to the chairman's charity. Now that's the chairman of the council, who is my vice chairman of planning. Peter, what is your chosen charity this year? Because you were keeping it close to your chest at one time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's the Swaffham and Litcham Home Hospice and Sands Baby Bereavement Society.
So there you go. You can continue your business and have a lovely warm feeling knowing that your £10 has gone to a worthy cause. Procedure for the day, as each item comes up on the agenda, I will ask various speakers to come and sit on the right-hand side. They are clearly marked with applicants, objectors, various members of different councils, etc. So if you come and sit on the right-hand side, the officers will give their presentation and then it will be open to your timed questions. I will give you your times. I will tell you when you can speak. And when your time is up, you get the bell. The bell means just finish that paragraph, that piece. Sum up, please. Sum up is not 3/4 an hour. Sum up is, please, we need to get on. Okay, we have a busy agenda today and other things to do after from that. Introductions, if I can go through my team for the day. On my left-hand side, I've got Mike Horn, who's solicitor to the council. My right-hand woman, which is Rebecca Collins. We've got Matthew Blackie, one of our chief planning officers. Chris Hobson at the back as well, chief planning officer. And we have, well, it's a good time to mention it. We've got Becky Burton, who was previously Becky Harris up until a week ago when she got married. So congratulations, Becky. I didn't tell you I was going to embarrass the hell out of you in front of everybody, but well done. Yes, yes, well done. And of course, the one that keeps us all together is Julie Britton from Democratic Services. No, don't applaud her. Don't applaud her, I'll go to her head. So that's it. So that's introductions done. So now we will start with the meeting. First of all, if I can cover off item number 1, which is the minutes, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of September 2023. Can I have your authority to sign those minutes off? Agreed. Thank you. Thanks, Julie. Put that in your puddle. Number 2, Julie, please, could I have apologies and substitutes?
Thank you, Chairman. I have one apology from Councillor Gordon Bambridge, and we have Councillor Samantha Taylor in attendance as his substitute.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor, for attending. Do appreciate that. Okay, so item 3 is declaration of interest and representations received. I will take them as each item is raised. Item 4, Chairman's announcements. Well, I've got nothing much to add. Any of you who have been to this meeting before know we do a very painful thing. It's even more painful in January, but it's not too bad now, is to mention that it's 56 sleeps to Christmas. And I will say that in January as well, so you're not suffering so bad today. Number 5, requested to defer applications in this agenda. Do I have any? None at all. Item 6, urgent business. Do we have any items? No, we don't. So we move to item 7, a local plan update, which Rebecca's going to continue off for us.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will be aware that Filigree Consultants held a series of public sessions in the market towns during October and September, and we are currently considering the outputs from those sessions, which were well attended. We are looking to take a paper to Cabinet at the end of November to seek agreement for the next formal round of Regulation 18 consultation. We are also planning a members' session in mid-December. We are currently confirming the dates and will be sending out invitations shortly. I can also confirm that the Watton Neighbourhood Plan is going to referendum on the 18th of January 2024. And if you have any questions, please contact Andy Darcy or Simon Wood. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm pleased to hear that the sessions were well attended. Will there at some point be a breakdown of the attendance, or either by sort of geographical location, you know, different market towns, or by total? It just might be helpful when one's looking at the responses. Thank you.
Yes, that'll get fed back to Simon and Mark. Okay. So here we go. Item 8 is deferred applications, which I've got none to take today. So we're going to move to item 9, the schedule of planning applications. And we're going to start with 9A at Banham, which is 3PL 2023-0525/F, which is a full application. Speakers for this, if you'd like to come sit on the right-hand side, I've got Magdalene and Alexander Lloyd, Sarah and Paul Baker, Joe and Andy Ludkin, and Eric Cole. And applicants, I've got Stephen and Rebecca Ballum. If you'd like to come and take a seat. I feel like the room's about to tip over and they moved you all from the back to the side. We've got enough chairs. I think we must have enough chairs. 1, 2, 3.
You can come round the front. Please do come round the front. Yeah.
Is it easier for us to move up? Yeah. Does it matter?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we'll, if we need anyone else, we can come and sit on these front tables here. Just
Signs are wrong, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about the signs. Yeah, it's just to get you a rough guidance of where you need to be. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mr. Cole's not here.
Oh, okay. 9. I should have 9.
Yeah, Mr. Baker's unavailable today.
Oh, sorry, that's okay. As long as we've got everyone here. Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Over to you then, please, Matthew.
All right, so good morning, everyone. So this is a planning application in the parish of Banham, and the site address is land to the southeast of Ivy Farm and New Buckingham Road. So this is a retrospective planning permission. So the application description is retrospective planning application for the retention of storage units, storing of materials and plant materials, and the change of use of land from agricultural to mixed agricultural and business use. And this is to include the retention of three temporary shipping containers used for office and workshop space, and then 2 temporary shipping containers used for cement and timber storage, and then 1 temporary shipping container used for electricity and water filtration plant room, and then 2 temporary shipping containers used to secure mechanical and tool storage. Okay, so we're going to start with the location plan. So as you can see, you got the.
You've clicked the.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry, I had the mic on, so you could hear me twice. Okay, so that's not what you want to be hearing. So, okay, so here we've got the location plan. So here you got the site here within red. So this is what is seeking permission. So this will be the land that is seeking temporary change of use from agricultural to mixed agricultural and business use. Here you've got the shipping containers that are situated down here. So this is one here, you've got the second one here, and then you've got the third one here. And these are also seeking temporary permission as well. And then the blue line represents, so this is New Buckingham Road here, and then the blue line sort of represents access to the site. And just to confirm, the applicant has confirmed that they've got passing rights over the access itself. Okay, and then this is just to give the site Okay, so this is just to give the site in wider context. So as you can see, this is an image from Google Maps aerial. So you've got the site here itself. You've got New Buckingham Road that runs along here, and then you've got residential dwellings that are situated here, here, and you've also got further residential dwellings that are situated along here and further down New Buckingham Road. I'd just like to highlight that you've also got a holiday let use that is situated here. So this is Old Farm holiday cottages. Okay. So this is the existing site plan. So as already mentioned, this is seeking retrospective permission. So therefore, the development has already commenced. So you've got the buildings here. I would just like to highlight, whilst the pond is located on the plan, this is not sought permission. So just to highlight that. And then you've got the elevations for the buildings here. So this is, I would like to just highlight just before we carry on that there has been a mislabeling. So this is actually building A. It is labelled as building C, but this is building A. You've got the elevations for building B here, and then you've also got the elevations for building C here. And then these are the existing floor plans. So as already highlighted, this one is building A. It's just been mislabeled. This one is building B, and then this is building C. So building A, you've got storage containers. Building C, you've got storage containers, a store, and then a workshop. And then building C, you've then got general office space, and a kitchenette and a study, highlighted also with heating equipment and storage container. I would just like to confirm from a site visit, we consider there to be inaccuracies with this floor plan. However, just note that they are seeking to have permission for, the application is focused on permission for business use. Okay, so just before we go into the site photos, so the application is being recommended for refusal. So there were 5 reasons for refusal, which I'm happy to set out. So the first one is we consider there to be insufficient information submitted to demonstrate why the business is seeking temporary permission. So so when it comes to employment-related uses, we have general defined employment areas within the local plan itself. However, we do permit for employment use outside of these general employment areas subject to a criteria. So the policy that is relevant in your decision making here is policy EC04. So these are for employment uses outside of defined employment areas. Okay, so the criteria is that we do allow it for the expansion of an existing business that are based on agriculture, forestry, or other industry where there are sustainability advantages being located in close proximity to the market that they serve, or industries or businesses which would be detrimental to a local community if located in settlements, including general employment areas. So we do consider that, so we know that the business is Waveney Construction Landscaping, but however, we do consider that there has been no information submitted to us why they are seeking temporary permission and why they seek to have their business use situated on here. Furthermore, there has been no assessment to why this business cannot be located on a general employment area. And as the use of the business is classified as a mixture of B2 and B8, we do consider that we would need an assessment to understand that reason why it can't be situated on a general employment area. And then finally, there has been highways concerns raised by Norfolk, the highways officer at Norfolk County Council Highways, and they do consider that the business use would have a detrimental impact on the highways, on the local highway network, which I'll come to in a minute. The second reason, I'll just go back in slides, we do consider that the erection of development on here, we do consider this to be intrusion into the open countryside. So we do hold concerns that this will set that by permitting this represents intrusion into the open countryside, and it goes against the grain and the pattern of development for the area. The third reason for refusal, as mentioned, was due to highways. So the highways officer did request improvement works to the existing access. The agent for the applicant confirmed that they don't have the rights to undertake the improvements that were requested, and due to the type of due to the type of vehicles that could be accessing the site, Norfolk County Council Highways were not satisfied with the proposal, and therefore they considered it to be potentially detrimental to the local highways network, and for that reason have recommended refusal. Okay, and then the fourth reason for refusal. So because of the insufficient information that has been submitted, we are not 100% certain on what activities are being undertaken on site, and due to concerns that have been raised locally about noise impact on neighbours, we do consider this to have detrimental impacts, and so therefore we are recommending refusal on impact on amenity. You will probably be aware that our environmental health team was consulted and they did raise no objection subject to conditions. However, as officers, we feel that as we have insufficient information on the activities, for that reason, we don't consider it to be reasonable to impose the conditions recommended, as we're not 100% certain on what will be enforced. And then finally, we do have a reason for refusal on ecology. So as works have already been undertaken, we're not sure on what potential impact has occurred on site, included on protected species. So as there is insufficient ecological information, we have recommended refusal for that reason as well. And then just to run through some site photos. So this is on site. As you can see, these are some of the shipping containers, and then this is another one of the storage containers. And then this one is building C itself. And then this is sort of looking out across the site. And then this is sort of looking south, so this is more the open countryside itself. And then this is again just looking into the site as well. Okay, so as stated, the application is recommended for refusal for 5 reasons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It's up to the objectors now. Have you elected a spokesperson or?
Yes,
Mrs. Baker. Okay, hang on. Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah Baker. Gotcha. You're okay with 3 minutes?
I guess so, yes. Yeah, that would be perfect.
I'd be a little bit flexible, so don't worry when you hear that bell.
Is that on? Ah, yes. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning. We are strongly objecting to this retrospective planning application for several key reasons. 1, the information on the planning application is not correct, and at least 16 of the statements are inaccurate. Regrettably, we do not have time here today to detail these, but hope you are aware of all the inaccuracies covered in detail in our letters of objection. Number 2, there is nothing within the application to actually determine the nature of the business. Number 3, the site has been gradually developed over a period of time, and all aspects of which should have had planning approval prior to commencement. The nature of the business, whatever it may be, none of which appears to have any agricultural connections, has over the past year caused myself and local residents lots of distress. There has been a procession of large lorries carrying trade waste which has been processed, producing noise and dust. There appears to be no record of what has been collected and stored and what has been created on the site. It should be noted at this point that the owner was formally requested to stop all activity and remove waste, but has continued to do so, and we do have documented evidence of this. The application seeks for retention of temporary storage units for machinery and cement, which points to a commercial enterprise of which we have no idea of its actual aims and possibly further expansion, with or without the relevant permissions. How long is temporary? Our countryside is already suffering from urban expansion. If a development of this type is allowed, we are concerned it will set a precedent for similar businesses, thus adding to the degradation of our surroundings. Regarding consultations with planning partners, only Highways and Environmental Health have submitted reports in which many legitimate concerns have been raised. Have ecology and Anglian Water been consulted? Surely a decision cannot be made without their reports. The letters of objections detail many points which should be given careful considerations. The access has been widened in contravention of highways regulations to accommodate the ever-increasing traffic. This is an example of one of the inaccuracies in the application form, and it should be noted that this is a 60-mile stretch of road on a bend and has had fatalities in the past. There is evidence of the site having been used for residential accommodation and further proposes more domestic amenities. Where is this leading? This is not mixed business agricultural use. The works that have been carried out recently have caused noise, dust and general disturbance at all hours of the day from early morning till late evening, all of which are detrimental to us as local residents in the use of our gardens and other amenities. The entire application is inaccurate and flawed. What is worrying is that it is a retrospective application. How has this site been allowed to develop and operate in contravention of planning laws? We ask that this historic contravention of planning is taken into consideration when decided on the outcome of this application going forward. To conclude, this development, whatever it may be, as there is no indication whatsoever in the application and based on what is occurring there past and present, should be refused. We have fears that if given approval, there is no guarantee as to how the site and the nature of the business will develop, or if the applicant, based on recent history, would abide by any conditions attached. Thank you.
Yep, I'm just going to get Rebecca to come in. By the way, you owe me 42 seconds. You overran, but I didn't feel like I needed to ring the bell. Rebecca, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, councillors, just to remind you, you can only consider the application that is in front of you today. So you can only consider the matters that are described in the description of development that is in front of you today. You cannot, unfortunately, take into account either that the fact that the application is retrospective, because the Planning Act allows you to submit retrospective planning applications, and you cannot take into account any unlawful works which have previously taken place on this site. You can only take into consideration that listed in the description of development in reaching a decision on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen and Rebecca Ballum. Oh, down the end, sorry. You've got 3 minutes, sir. Again, I'll be a little bit flexible, so not to worry. Press the button and it will come up red. You're away.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. I haven't got anything prepared. Ah, sorry. Can I? I felt like I was at school. A long while ago. Good morning. I haven't got anything prepared for anything other than the few photos which were sent in, which are a bit more up to date, as you're now seeing. So I'll start with them while they're up. This is off the passable rights access, which we have no jurisdiction over, but we have legal. This is how the track from our boundary looks going in now. As you can see, it's heavily planted. It doesn't look like a quarry in some of the comments, some of the statements. We've had no HGVs in there for over 4 months now, regardless of what the comments are saying. We did everything with Environment Agency notices and WEX licences in place, and we've had 12 visits off the council in the last 11 months, both Norfolk County Council and Breckland. Matthew, Gary Collins, Stephen from Norfolk, and none of them has served a stop permit at any time. We've actually got conversations where they've said you're good to carry on. So that's misled the local people. So the documents in question, we've not seen them, ever. Well, we would have been stopped. We've had no enforcement notice to stop the works which have been going on. We have, if you move on the photos, please. These are the views looking in. So this is off New Buckingham Road, the highway, from the north. That is the roof of our building there, that little shiny strip. And that's only shiny because the sun is glaring on it when that photo is taken. We cladded the containers black for aesthetics, so they weren't so intrusive. This one is from the other side of Miss Barker's, up near the junctions to Doe Lane, etc. The actual containers are there. if you can see them, because all you can see is the Wi-Fi mast, that little white square, tiny white square. Sorry, I think they heard it anyway. If you could put the next ones on. This is a view looking out. This is Old Checkers. This is Miss Barker's house here. That is as much as we can see. As you can see, it's environmentally, that looks pretty good. It's full of nature, loads of nest and wildlife. We've not had a detrimental impact on it. We've actually introduced more. There's deer, swans, ducks, cormorants, moorhens, kestrels, red kites, buzzards, pheasants, hares, everything all over the land now, which the guy in this house, Mr. Cox, has stated. It's improved no end, the wildlife since we've been going. This is taken 6 months after being seeded up and planted. So you can imagine what it's going to look like in a year or 2 years. If you can move on, please. Here's some of the species. Wildflowers sowed on every single bund. We've created a wildflower mix for insect life. We've collected the seeds and we've spread all over the field this autumn. So in the spring, 6.5 acres of wildlife reserve. That's what we're going for. That's what we're aiming for. Our storage is a temporary application for 2 years. And that's all we're asking for is 2 years so we can get ourselves on our feet and move off. We want to produce beekeeping, we want to introduce organic vegetables, fruit, but we're up against the wall at the moment, financially and business-wise. My business is landscape and groundworks, which doesn't take place on here. It's purely to store our equipment and tools securely.
Yes, we did have the vehicles before, which they're worried about, which nobody came and saw us. If they would have come and saw us, we would have done anything.
There you go.
We've helped all the neighbours in the past, and you know, so it's, I don't know where all this is coming from.
Thank you. I did overrun. I let you have the same, so there's no unfairness in any of that. Okay, thank you very much. I can actually, no, I've switched it off, don't worry. I have the power. Okay, it's open to questions from members. No questions at all? Okay, Matthew, you're happy with us proceeding?
Yeah, that's fine.
Even though there were statements there? No?
No.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move swiftly on. So with regards to this application at Banham, 3PL 2023-0525/F, your officer's recommendation is one of refusal. Could I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. This item is refused. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for all your time this morning. 10:30, we're going to move on to Scarning, which is application 3PL 2022-1220. This application is in outline format. We'll just allow the people to leave, and I will call the speakers forward. Come forward, that's fine. So I've got Fiona Bradford, who's the chairman of Scarning Parish Council, Anthony Needham, who's the clerk of Dereham Town Council, Stuart Oldroyd, who's the applicant, Councillor Linda Turner, who's the ward rep. And we also have a statement we will read out a little bit later from Councillor Paul Hewitt, and we have Anthony Coomber, who is an objector as well. Oh, there you are. Okay, terrific. Over to you then, please, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, item 9D in Scarning. So the outline, it's an outline application seeking consent for the erection of a care home, use class C2. And as mentioned, the site there sits land east of Drayton Hall Lane. You can see there from the screen by the red dot. And just before going into the presentation, I just wanted to highlight the supplementary report to members. So within that, we've received further 2 consultation responses, one from the ecologist and one from Norfolk County Council Adult Social Care Team. And since the preparation of that report, we've also had 3 further objections from the local community, one including Councillor Webb. So they raised the same kind of concerns and matters that were raised in the report, so particularly in relation to highway safety, impacts on congestion, also matters of noise for future residents. So I'll just go into the presentation now. So yeah, as mentioned, we've got the site there, land east of Drayton Hall Lane. So we'll see there the site, edge red. So Drayton Hall Lane sits due west of the site. The A47 sits beyond a tree belt to the south. We've got the residential area, particularly Hawthorne Drive and those houses off Drayton Hall Lane to the north. In terms of just a bit more context, so understanding where this sits in relation to Dereham. So obviously we've got this red star there again showing the application site. So we'll see there due south of the site, we can see the A47 running east to west. You can see the settlement of Dereham to the north. Just obviously show Drayton Hall Lane, obviously running due west of the site. So there we can see it sits on the edge of the town. We're in the obviously parish of Scarning, but we can see the rest of Dereham to the east. In terms of how it sits in terms of the local plan, so the Dereham settlement boundary sits, well, it's shown by the red edge. So we can see the site here. So in terms of other things to note, we can see it obviously sits adjoining but outside. We've got the Scarning Meadows due northeast, woodlands, open areas. We can see Potterfen County Wildlife Site to the due southwest. We've got a flood risk zone here associated with the watercourse that sits obviously running from Dereham out. So that's due south-east of the site. But you get an idea of the context. So open fields due kind of west of the site, the town of Dereham to the east, open fields again beyond the A47 to the south. So the site in more detail really. So again, we can see the residential area to the north. So these are 2-storey houses. We've got again tree belt that's due south of the site. We can see the junction here, which is of particular concern. Obviously just due south of the site. I see there are trees on site. We can see those from the photos in a moment and the aerial there. So we've got the tree belt along the A47. Obviously due south, there is some young specimens on site which will be lost. We'll touch on those kind of matters in more detail in due course, but that gives you an idea of the relationship to the area to the north. In terms of site photos, so this is actually frontage of the site, so we can see in front of us the site here. We can just make out those houses due north, just beyond there, and the mature trees to the south and east on that right-hand side. You can also see the kind of land slope here, and again down, that slopes down towards the A47. So this is the junction down here with the A47 and Drayton Hall Lane. The site sits obviously just on the left there, and again you get an idea of the slope here, which slopes obviously downwards to the south and east, which you can also see here from footpath into the site. So we've got the tree belts along the edge here, and some trees which would be lost within the site here. And there's particularly shown that boundary to the north, so the 2-storey houses here and here. Yeah, so in terms of the proposals, we'll just talk through those. As I said at the start, it's an outline scheme, so what we're considering here is the principle and the access, all those other matters in terms of scale and appearance of reserve matters, and also landscaping. So you get an idea of the layout here. it is for a 60-bed care home, so it is a residential institution type setting. Apologies. We'll show that from the site indicative layout, but we can see the relationship to the A47, the residential area here. So in terms of the indicative layout, I say it's indicative at this point, but you can see how such a scheme would work in terms of the layout. So internally there's this individual bed spaces. We've got additional space in terms of kitchens, reception spaces, shared day rooms, etc. You can see the open space around as well, and car parking to the front in this area here. And again, that's the first floor. In terms of uses, pretty similar at first floor. So they've also provided an idea of how the site would sit, obviously given the changes in land levels, how it would sit in relation to those houses due north. So we can see how it relates here. Again, in indicative appearance. See how the proposal sits due south as well in terms of height. So eaves we can see from 52 Drayton Hall Lane here. Similar eaves, ridge is obviously taller to accommodate the bulk in terms of footprint. And again, that's due southeast. And that view also from the apologies, that's I think that's bear with me, yeah, from the southwest. And there's an indicative street scene from Drayton Hall Lane. As mentioned, the application seeks outline consent with access for approval. So here we can see the access onto Drayton Hall Lane. Here, obviously got splays here down to the junction of the A47 and northwards. As we'll discuss in more detail, the Highways Authority have raised no objections to the access. So in terms of kind of some of the issues, I think you'll be aware of the issues from the report, but in terms of the issues locally, there's a clear concern in terms of the highway issues. Those are reflected really in terms of the comments from Councillor Turner, Councillor Webb, and both Scarning and Dereham Town Council. We have 25 objections as well, and those centre on those issues in terms of highway safety and the relationship to the A47 junction due south of the site. In terms of the proposals, obviously, as mentioned, I'll just go back to the settlement boundary, which shows the site sits just outside but adjoining. So there's a conflict in terms of where it sits. There's a general approach in the local plan which seeks to provide such facilities and growth, new build within the settlement boundary. But obviously in this instance, you'll see from the report that we have had regard to the need for such C2 bed spaces. That is clearly set out in the local plan in terms of policy HOW 9, in terms of the need to support such uses. There is criteria in relation to that, and again, it does, as noted, conflict with its location. But having regard, obviously, to the latest comments from the adult social care team at Norfolk County Council, it's clear that there's approximately 450 bed spaces which will be needed for this type of use by 2028. So there's a clear need there, but also this proposal does also provide modern facilities, and the evidence that's been submitted by the applicants highlights that there's actually a deficiency in the type of modern spaces within the town and local area. So when obviously when we've had regard to the need, it's clear in the amount in terms of need is considered that need outweighs, in particular, the issues here where we are seeking to retain the protect the intrinsic character of the countryside. Obviously, the site sits here, and when we look at the impacts in terms of form of the town, obviously it appears as a natural extension to the town. We can see how the town has done in the past, extended to the A47. The screening to the south and east, and as we've seen from the images in terms of scale, in terms of heights, it's considered that in principle the scheme has shown that a scheme for this use can be provided on site without causing substantial harm to the landscape of the surrounding area. So in that regard, despite the conflict, the proposals having regard to the need, the clear need and amount of need for this type of use is considered to outweigh the conflict in this regard. In terms of going through the matters highlighted in the report in terms of scale and design, as mentioned, in terms of the impact on the landscape, it's considered that when we have a look at how it sits in terms of the context, as mentioned, in terms of landscaping, in terms of that retained and to the boundary, it's considered that the proposals wouldn't cause overriding harm to the landscape. We can see from the images that work has been done to integrate the built form into the heights and makes use of, in particular, the sloping land levels due as it slopes down to the south and east. In terms of moving on to other matters, in terms of residential amenity, in terms of the existing occupants, we can see from the layout here how it seeks to retain space to the sides of these houses. In terms of how, when we've looked at distances, those are considered to be acceptable in terms of avoiding overriding impacts from loss of light, overlooking, and again, in principle, because we're not looking at the layout in detail, in principle, it's considered that the form and scale of a 60-bed care home can be provided without causing overriding harm to the residents to the north. We're also looking at the future occupants. It's considered that, whilst appreciating the proximity to the A47, that when we look at a detailed scheme, that those matters can be addressed at the reserve matter stage. In particular, would highlight the environmental health team have raised no objections. There is a condition that ensures a noise assessment is submitted within the reserve matters scheme. So, in terms of when the reserve scheme comes to us, we have full understanding of the impact and how we, in terms of how we can address that through the detailed scheme on site. Turning to probably the principal issue in terms of highway safety. So you'll see from the report, it's understandable, the junction, just get to the site plan and access, the junction that just sits due southwest of the site, junction of Drayton Hall Lane and the A47 has been subject to incidents in the past. There has been a fatal incident in 2017. Now that's obviously been reviewed by ourselves as officers, but also we also have to have regard to the comments of the Highways Authority at the County Council, but also National Highways, who obviously maintain the A47 that just sits to the south. We have to give significant regard and weight to their consultation responses, and where we sit on this, obviously you'll see from the report that neither of those have raised objections to the proposals. I think when we have a look at the impacts of the scheme itself, that is the key aspect here in terms of what impacts this scheme will have. And obviously we've looked at the transport statement and the evidence there. And what they've highlighted is that a 60-bed care home of this kind of size and nature is envisaged to kind of, at worst, create an additional trip every 6 minutes. So actually, when you look at the impact of that, the impact of this scheme, whilst having regard to the incidents at the nearby junction, we have to focus on the impact here of this scheme, the merits of this scheme, and having regard to that, the impacts aren't considered to be significant. So you'll see from the report that's set out in detail in terms of those trip rates, etc. I think we have to bear in mind that the test in the MPPF is severe impacts as well. As I say, the harm there is not considered to be significant. So whilst the understandable concern is in terms of the scheme here and proximity to the junction, in this regard, when we reviewed the proposals against local and national planning policy, the proposals are considered to comply with policies TR02, TR1 of the local plan. In terms of other matters, in terms of trees, I've touched on there will be a loss from the scheme, but we have received no objections from the tree officer, and as we'll see, the impacts are kind of more on the internal trees. Those mature specimens to the south and east are retained. There's a condition to ensure that there's appropriate replacement in the reserved matters application. We'll see in terms of ecology, the proposals would obviously impact on habitats on site, but our ecologist, as mentioned from the recent comments, have raised no objections. The applicants are proposing to seek net gain in terms of biodiversity via the Wenling Beck site, which is within close proximity to the site to the northwest. In terms of other impacts, in terms of Norfolk GIRAMs, the proposals, as I said in the report, seek approval to secure those via Section 106 agreement, and similarly, the site sits within the neutrality catchment area, and the applicants are proposing and agreed to provide credits to that when those are available, and those would be secured via Section 106 agreement. You'll see that we're waiting final comments from Natural England as part of the recommendation here. We're seeking approval to complete the appropriate assessment under the habitat regulations, and once we have that, we'll obviously undertake that and consult with Natural England in that regard. In terms of other matters, in terms of flood risk and drainage, the lead local flood authority have raised no objections. Obviously highlighted the site does sit within proximity to the watercourse that's due southeast, but the application site does sit outside in terms of the residential houses, residential scheme outside of flood zones. The flood surface water flood risk does extend to the boundaries here, but having regard to the proposals, it does comply with policy NV09 in terms of avoiding the areas at flood risk, and they're actually proposing surface water attenuation, so discharge into the watercourse following attenuation on site through tanks underground, and that would ensure that the runoff rate isn't increased from where the site sits at the minute in terms of greenfield land. In terms of other matters, we'll see issues like contamination and archaeology can be addressed via condition. I'd also highlight, in terms of infrastructure, when we've reviewed the consultation response from the NHS Trust, as members are aware, we often do seek and secure contributions towards the NHS Trust in the local area when we have an impact like this. But as you see from the report, when reviewed what they've said in terms of their request, they haven't necessarily provided enough information on actually particularly what the impacts would be and what a project or contribution would be put towards. And to just highlight, as we've said before, in terms of the tests within the SIL regulations and the MPPF in terms of what contributions can be sought and how they need to be reasonable, proportionate, etc. And in that regard, with that lack of information, we don't have that sufficient justification in this instance, and as highlighted by the applicants, actually what we're looking at here is a nursing and care home, so there is a significant element of actual day-to-day care on the site of the actual residents themselves, so that will be helping in terms of care and issues, in terms of the health services in the local area, in terms of avoiding that immediate transfer to a GP surgery, etc. But also, when we have regard to what this is being sought, it is a care home and nursing home. It's not an open residential home where here there'll be a particular element of care, and when that's having regard to what the growth potential that the NHS are trying to mitigate for, when we have a look at that, the actual that kind of need will be also reduced in terms of residents, particularly coming from the local area, rather than additional growth in terms of houses, as we see. They'll be referred. They get to a requirement in terms of need of care, and obviously they'll be coming from particularly. We can't always guarantee, but from the district and area. So when we have regard to that, as I say, we usually secure those contributions, but in this instance, we don't feel that meets the tests. In terms of summing up, really, as highlighted, the proposals, there is a conflict there in terms of where it sits in terms of our spatial approach to development. It is outside, but when we look at the kind of approach to kind of ensuring that they sit within the higher end, it sits on the edge of a market town at obviously the higher end of the approach. We've got that is a conflict being outside, but it sits at that top end. That there is an impact on the site itself, but when we actually have a look at what the need is, what the particular need will be by 2028. Now, as mentioned in the report, that need has changed since the local plan, which highlighted more like 1,200 bed spaces. Because of the development of extra care and other facilities, that need has slightly changed, and we don't think will be to such an extent as the local plan highlighted, but there's a clear 450 bed spaces is an acute need. When we have regard to that, it's considered the need does outweigh the conflict. In terms of the other matters as highlighted, we fully understand the concerns. However, when we've had regard to what the impacts of this scheme is, it's not considered to be significant in terms of highways trips. And as highlighted, those authorities that provide us with advice in terms of highway safety have raised no objections. So in that regard, the proposals are considered to be acceptable. And as highlighted, all other kind of concerns and issues can be addressed by condition and through the Section 106 agreement. So the recommendation set out in the report and is for approval, subject to those conditions and authority being given to officers to enter into a legal agreement to secure the obligations. There is one final matter. Sorry, the applicants did request it's a late item to really highlight kind of, one issue, just being that they need to secure occupant of the site and buyer. Now they've requested an additional 2 years, so condition 1 does require reserved matters to be submitted within 3 years, so they've requested to members to consider an extension to that to 5 years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Just 1 second, people. Julie, is that part of? Is that the cameras or not?
Do you want us to get IT? Yeah, please. Becky, can you get IT for me, please?
So we've got a screen that's gone completely bonkers here. Okay, I think we'll proceed anyway. Councillor Turner, would you like to go first or last? Last. Okay. So I've got Fiona Bradford, who's the chairman of Scarning Parish Council. Okay, get your microphone on. You have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here on behalf of Scarning Parish Council. The Council first considered this application on the 21st of November, and our decision was placed in our minutes, which I will just go over. So the Parish Council strongly objected to this application for the following reasons. The proposed property is outside the settlement boundary and appears to be a cramped form of development. In view of the location, it is thought that most visitors would travel by car and not via public transport or on foot. 25 car parking spaces is not sufficient for staff and visitors. There is no separate place for deliveries and departures. I think you've all seen the plan and the frontage of the care home. Many of you will go up and down Drayton Hall Lane. Many of you will have sat there and queued down the whole of the frontage of the proposed application site. It is a very dangerous junction, and if we're looking at it, if we're turning off the A47 up Drayton Hall Lane and you have a development on the right-hand side, if you have vehicles trying to turn into that development, you're going to get backed up down onto the A47 and build up traffic jams that way, coming from Norwich going towards Kings Lynn. That junction is extremely dangerous. It's extremely busy at certain times of the day, and there are concerns that people may wander out, and the A47 is always busy. It's never particularly quiet, and obviously with holiday traffic and that, the traffic increases. So that was our concern there. The council does not consider this as a suitable location for a care home, particularly with dementia patients. Again, because dementia patients, with the best will in the world, sometimes people do wander away. Proximity of the A47, a very busy junction. You've got a sort of a 90-degree angle of traffic along that site, so that could be very difficult. You have looked at accidents in the last few years. You've got to remember, in the last few years, we've had COVID. There's been very little traffic at times for 2 years on that junction. If you went back further and researched further, you may see that there's far more incidents that occurred at that junction, and residents do consider it a very, very dangerous junction. The council felt that this piece of land was originally left over from when the Scarning estate was built, so therefore it's a fairly cheap piece of land to acquire and build on. We're not denying the fact that there is a need for a care home, but perhaps the location is not quite right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. I've got Anthony Needham, please, who's the clerk for Durham Town Council. 3 minutes, sir. Have you broken it?
You go.
He has. Don't let him near one of those, please.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the benefits of growing old is so far I've got a long memory, and my memory goes back a long way, but I'm getting confused. In 2015, as part of the local plan process, this went out, Breckland local plan, emerging site options. There were 9 sites came forward around that junction at the Scarning end. 9 sites. All 9 sites were deemed to have a severe impact on the highways because of this junction. So at the time the local plan was done, any development in that area, and those 9 sites were further away from the junction than this particular one. They're all deemed to have a severe impact on the highways. So I don't understand why in 2015 any additional traffic on the junction was deemed to have a severe impact, but now it's not deemed to be severe. The 2019 improvements was some additional signage, nothing significant or that could be noticed. One of the drawbacks of growing old is that when we drive, when driving, our reactions and judgment are not as good as they used to be. And indeed, if you look at the graph of, this is government figures of killed and seriously injured by age group and miles driven, you can see once you get over 70, your risk of being killed or seriously injured in a road traffic accident increases significantly. I hope you can all see that. If you can't, you shouldn't be driving home. I'll hold that up again. Right, so while the transport assessment looked at the volumes of cars, it didn't consider the drivers. People visiting relatives, there's likely to be a high proportion of elderly drivers, wives and husbands, quite possibly elderly drivers who are probably feeling a bit emotional and not concentrating 100% when they leave the home. It may be people who have spent their whole lives with a partner and now that partner's gone into a care home. The most common contributory factor for older people in fatal or seriously injured accidents is driver failed to look properly and the driver failed to judge another person's path or speed. Judging speed at that junction is really, really important. If a planning decision were made solely on expert advice, then we would not need counsellors. Counsellors bring local knowledge to a situation which a highways officer sitting in an office 100 miles away looking at Google Street View would not really appreciate. Everybody knows this junction is dangerous, in the same way as everybody knew the Honingham junction was dangerous, but nothing was done until that poor lad from Mattershall was killed there in 2004. He didn't get a chance to grow old. It is all very well for National Highways to hide behind policy and wait for a few fatalities before improvements are made, but they do not have to look people in the eye and say that they did all they could to prevent further tragedies at that junction. We're not demanding any improvements. All we're saying is don't make a dangerous situation worse. Object to this application and let a planning inspector make that judgment call, or ask NCC and National Highways to explain why in 2015 the impact of any development in this area was deemed to be severe, but now it is not deemed to be severe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I've got Stuart Oldroyd, who's the applicant. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and Councillors. Good morning, I'm Stuart Oldroyd and I speak for the applicants. This application has benefited from detailed and constructive pre-application discussions and rigorous scrutiny throughout the determination process. It is firmly recommended for approval by your officers and is supported by all statutory consultees, including National Highways, the Local Highway Authority, Norfolk County Council Adult Social Care and Environmental Health. The application has been put together by an experienced team. It is submitted in outline to establish the principle of development and to give a future occupier the flexibility to submit a detailed scheme that can incorporate their operator requirements later. There is a desperate need for housing for the elderly. A care home provides accommodation with 24-hour care and support for residents to live out the last months of their life with support and dignity. Residents are usually very frail and they need help with walking, washing, dressing, personal hygiene, feeding, medication, laundry and using the bathroom. Some residents cannot walk at all. Many are singularly or doubly incontinent. A large percentage live with dementia. Existing care homes do not provide self-contained dwellings such as in extra care or assisted living schemes. Instead, they provide bedrooms with an ensuite bathroom and residents spend much of their time in shared living spaces. Sorry, I'm talking about the proposed scheme, not existing. As residents are vulnerable, they live within a controlled environment that is specifically designed so they cannot wander off. This is as required by Care Quality Commission standards. Existing care homes in Dereham and the surrounding area are roughly 30 to 50 years old and they lack the most basic of modern day requirements. A quarter of them do not have an ensuite and rely on shared bathrooms. Many have baths, which are less safe and less dignified than private wet rooms. Only 40% have specialist dementia beds, and this is the key area that residents face. Norfolk County Council Adult Social Care state that by 2028, just 5 years from now, there will be a need to build an additional 454 care and nursing beds in the Breckland district, of which 162 beds must be provided by the local authority. 2028 is not that far away, but this proposal can make a significant contribution to meeting that need. As residents are too frail to drive cars, the proposal will only generate traffic from staff and visitors, which will only be equivalent to 6 additional vehicles in the morning and afternoon peak hours. That's 1 every 10 minutes. It won't cause backing up onto the A47. The Drayton Hall Lane and A47 junction has had a recent upgrade since the 2017 fatal accident that you've heard about, which has dramatically reduced incidents. National Highways and the local highway authority have no objection to the application, which conformed with your adopted highways policies. The site is on lower ground than the residential properties to the north, reducing its relative height. This is a 2-storey building that's been carefully designed to avoid negatively impacting on existing residents. The site's separated from the A47 by existing dense planting, and there are no noise issues, and we therefore respectfully request that planning permission is granted in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Anthony Coomer, please, who's an objector. Thank you.
Maybe I have a correction. It's not an objection. It's more where we're right adjacent to their actual care home and their property opposite. Now, we'd have no reason to object, but the concerns that we've got is because, like, where we are, the actual fence joining to our one. Now, the thing is, it was built 30, 40 years ago. So we were just wondering, like the resident opposite us, would there be any compensation for a secondary fence for where the actual building is and to where the actual where our buildings are? And another point is how far is it going to come to our actual properties? Another thing is noise pollution when it's being built. I work night shift, and obviously there's going to be an impact of how many months or it's going to be built. So, and thirdly, we moved there, and one of the primary because we had no properties on the right hand on where we were. Now the thing is, since we built there, it's been built up, and we were just wondering, as there was an open space 20 years ago, would we be in line for any compensation at all for where the building is going to be built? Thank you for letting me in on the last minute. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Rebecca's now going to read out or paraphrase a written statement from Councillor Paul Hewitt. Thank you.
Thank you. Whilst only an outline application, this is a poor location, inadequate parking, adjacent to a dangerous road and junction, unsustainable transport links, and poorly thought through. In this regard, it beggars belief that the highways have not commented on what they often describe as one of the most dangerous sections of A road in the county, but instead are okay as long as they get a fire hydrant and there is less than one extra car trip made every 6 minutes. I rarely criticise the Highways Authority directly, but I would urge the committee members to have sight of that underlying report because the number stated is wrong. Local people know that the statistics quoted in paragraph 4.4, which justify the application, are not correct. This application is not sustainable in TR01 and TR02 terms. It is in the wrong place, is the wrong size and the wrong layout. It simply does not meet the admittedly low bar of an acceptable place to live, and even less a nursing home for elderly residents. The fact that the application meets an economic viability threshold is because the land is cheap, and that the land is cheap is not a reason. And the land is cheap for a reason. The site is not of a high value landscape because it should not be built on, let alone for some of the most vulnerable in our society. How 9 does not support this development. It simply raises no restriction against it, no matter how much we need a nursing home or our highways need hydrants. And references to Gen 02, Gen 05, EMV02 and EMV03 appear spurious justifications to build or not to build are irrelevant, as the site is simply unsuitable. An identified insufficient volume in care beds should not should not make it necessary the agreement to providing them, no matter how unsuitable the location and how high the human costs of people living there and unable to leave. Breckland's strategic vision seeks to deliver an improved quality of life to residents, ensuring communities will be more sustainable, prosperous, safe, healthy and vibrant, and promoting a sense of local community and belonging, with decisions made at a community level reflected in development proposals. This application offers none of these things. This application is for a 60-bed care home that should be where residents and patients should be able to walk freely as part of a wider, diverse community. This application is not for an isolated and cramped prison building remote from shops or places to walk to, even though it might be conveniently contribute to GI RAMs and has no impact on architectural assets, which as a result seems to be used as a justification for accepting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Mr. Turner, please, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking as the other ward representative for Scarning. However, I'm also a former care home manager, so I speak with experience in this matter. I also lived in the large estate to the north of the application for 3 years, so I have first-hand knowledge of the pressures on Drayton Hall Lane and the junction with the A47. As Breckland's older people's champion, I absolutely support and understand the need for more care provision, but it has to be in the right place to maximise the well-being of its residents, staff and visitors and adjacent community. Care facilities must be person-centred as the first priority. This is simply not the right site. You've already heard the concerns about the location of the proposed care home and its proximity to the A47. Under policy COM02, even with sympathetic landscaping, the volume, smell, dust, noise and nature of the traffic on both the A47 and Drayton Hall Lane will impact on the health and well-being of the residents and staff. And should this application be approved, a full health impact assessment should be required. How can a facility, as proposed, possibly integrate with the surrounding community? There are no amenities such as shops, church or a community hall within walking distance. The nearest bus stop is 1 kilometre away from the site. Everything and everybody will have to be accessed by vehicles. Drayton Hall Lane is the main artery from the A47 into the current residential estate and Scarning village itself. It is always frantically busy, especially during the peak times of school traffic and holiday times, as my colleague told you. The Parish Council, County Council and I are constantly referring this junction to Highways and Norfolk County Council. To have a large volume of extra traffic using an extra access into this road will create even more unsafe traffic issues, and the provision of another fire hydrant, as requested by Highways, will not solve the fundamental issue. This is simply not the right site. I just want to talk briefly about parking. The Care Quality Commission guidelines expect 1 full-time staff to each resident over a 24-hour 3-shift timetable. So for 60 residents, that would be 20 care staff on duty at one time. When you add in ancillary staff such as admin, cleaners, caterers, activity organisers, then add in your visitors, visiting health practitioners, etc., 25 proposed spaces is far from adequate. There are other far more suitable sites on land within the current local plan, even within Scarning. So I would ask the committee to please consider all you've heard today before making your decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, it's open to questions from members. Any members wishing to ask questions? Councillor Attawell, far away.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm gobsmacked, frankly, that anybody thinks in their right mind that this is the correct location for a care home. We seem to be, with this, trying to put our elderly people out of sight, out of mind. I think, as part of our duty here as a planning committee, we really do need to give full focus and weight to the quality of the lives of the residents who may live in that home. Councillor Turner has, with her immense experience and our elderly people's champion, speaks very well when she says it's not near any amenities. I mean, if you could bring back the map of where this is located in terms of Dereham and the settlement, please, Chris. No, you had the wider map of Dereham. Yeah. So anybody with an ounce of local knowledge knows that there are no amenities anywhere near that. So that's point one. You're quite right, Councillor Turner. Anybody there, you can't access shops, you can't access church, local facilities. I read in the report that there isn't a nearby bus stop that anybody would have to walk. I think whoever wrote the rule that national guidance that says you should be able to walk up to 2 kilometres to get to a bus stop is nuts, and clearly somebody that never uses a bus. So that's my thing on that. This is clearly outside the settlement boundary. It does not therefore mean that we have to necessarily give permission as it's outside the settlement boundary. It might be adjacent to it, but I think the policies that we have with regard to building adjacent to the settlement boundary, I think reading the local plan document relates to housing. I think that there is a totally wrong location. In terms of traffic, I've got to tell you, I mean, I would say if you want to know what local people feel about experts, ask people in Attleborough last weekend what they think about experts who said, you know, apparently that was all right to build in Attleborough, despite this committee saying and having reservations and refusing it. I don't think we should just take carte blanche because somebody's done a desktop study in an office very remote from where we sit here currently. We should be taking account of that and blithely saying, yes, we're accepting that, and they raise no objections. What we should be doing is we should be challenging them, if need be, come down to site, view it yourself, look at the thing. Local knowledge, local people, hundreds of local people know that there is a very bleak accident black spot. It is incredibly dangerous, especially if you're travelling westward towards Swaffham and want to turn right into that. You have to manoeuvre into the middle of the A47, take your life in your hands. I've been down there all times of the day and the traffic backs up on that junction. I would also say, from a safety point of view, having a care home that close to the A47, has any account been taken of the noise impact on the residents? Because standing there day and night, you've got traffic going up and down there. The noise impact, I would think, is immense. Has any account been taken of the air quality, putting a care home at that point? And I have to say, as somebody, lastly, I'm summing up here, Chairman, as somebody who had a resident escape from a care home in my patch, sadly, was found deceased. That there, residents do escape. You can have all the policies you like. I see the communal garden area situated right in the bottom right-hand corner nearest to the A47. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. I want to know why we're placing so much emphasis on expert opinion on this junction. I think this is a tick box exercise from Highways England, and I don't think we should support this application. I really think this is a very dangerous location and it's not placed central. As Councillor Turner said, there is loads of other land available in the Dereham location, far better suited to have a care home. Yes, we do need care home provision, but we shouldn't accept it at any cost.
Thank you. Would you like to say something? Oh, you look like you want to say something. Yes?
Yeah.
Oh, you're in trouble now.
So there wasn't actually a question in there, but I think there's some points there that are worth sort of covering off. So, you know, in terms of our role as planning officers and your role of planning committee is to determine the application in front of you, not the application that you want it to be. So there may well be better sites located elsewhere in other places, but this is the application in front of you and this is the application that you need to consider. And I'm sure I don't need to remind you, councillors, that your role is considering that in accordance with planning and policy, taking into account other material planning considerations. So the relevant planning policy here is set out, you know, in the officer report. Policy Gen 05 is not a housing policy. It does refer to all development. You'll note from your report, policy HOW 05 isn't referenced because that is a residential policy, so that is your housing policy. Policy Gen 04 is for development outside of settlement boundaries. That's all development outside of settlement boundaries. Just to assist you, policy Gen 05 it does allow for development outside settlement boundaries. It absolutely does, where it doesn't affect the intrinsic beauty and character of the countryside. So that is an assessment that Chris has made in his officer report. It is something that for you to consider whether you feel that development outside the settlement boundary does affect the intrinsic beauty and character of the countryside. Chris has already set out that development in this area will change the location. He has had due regard, obviously, though, to policy HOW 09, which is your specialist housing policy. So this is your additional care policy. And Chris has set out in some detail already why we consider that policy HOW 09 is particularly prevalent in this area. It does say that development should be located in higher order settlements, so it fundamentally does say that, and Chris has set that out in his presentation. But given the significant need for care, the high level of proposals, the stage that the development is at, we consider as officers that outweighs the conflict with development being outside the settlement boundary. Of course, members, it's completely within your remit to balance those policies in any way you see fit. So taking into account development outside the settlement boundary and the intrinsic beauty and character of the countryside, and whether you feel, members, that this being located outside of the defined settlement boundary, although immediately adjacent to it, which I consider to be another material consideration, would have a significant impact in terms of HOW 09, and as Chris has set out, whether that extremely high need for care does outweigh its location. So, members, today that will be in your remit to balance those policies. With regard to the patients themselves, I think if the chairman's acceptable to it, what I heard from the applicant was that a lot of them were unable to leave their rooms without significant support and care, and that were heavily supervised, is what I heard. And if the chairman is acceptable to that, I'm sure that the applicant would repeat the exact type of patients that are using that facility. So that's what I heard from the applicant. You know, it's up to the chairman whether he would like him to repeat that or not. In terms of noise and air quality, members, I would remind you that we have no objections from our environmental health team, who are your statutory consultees in providing you advice in that regard. And also we have no objections from the Highways Agency and the Highways Authority, who are again your statutory consultees that provide you guidance in that regard. And as statutory consultees, their responses to the application are other material considerations which you are required to take into account in the determination of that application in reaching your decision. So I think those are the points that I heard, and those are the comments that we make as officers. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. I will have Councillor Wilkinson in a moment, and I see two other people wanting to speak, but I will follow up on that with the applicant. Is there clarification of a care home residency? In other words, this is going to be a category whatever. I mean, we likened it to prisons, which I hated the thought of that, but yes, is this what we're talking about? that you know, we will have key entry, CCTV, etc., etc. I don't want it to be looked upon as a prison, and I know from Councillor Attwell's experience with the resident who he, in his words, escaped, was a very unfortunate incident and shouldn't have happened. And I believe various things have been put in place now to try and stop that from happening further, from what I got from someone. But anyway, please.
Address that. I don't know the details of the SKP from the past, but I suspect that that's happened from a very old building that hasn't been designed to the correct standards, and that's the key point, that a lot of the facilities that are available at the moment don't meet current standards set out by the Care Quality Commission. What we propose is something that is bang up to date, that is modern, that is specifically built for its purpose, and that won't have those deficiencies. It won't therefore be possible for a resident to wander off. We're very aware of the fact that our residents are at the last stages of their life. Many of them have dementia. Perhaps if I can just restate that one paragraph then, just to be absolutely clear as to the nature of our residents. A care home provides accommodation with 24-hour care and support for residents to live out the last months of their lives with support and dignity. Residents are usually very frail and may need help with walking, washing, dressing, personal hygiene, feeding, medication, laundry, and going to the bathroom. Some residents cannot walk at all, and many are singularly or doubly incontinent. A large percentage live with dementia. I hope that clarifies the point.
Could you, you don't have to, could you indulge me with the elephant in the room, which is the location to the A47, your feelings on that? If you wish, you don't have to.
Yes, we have taken that into account, and we are aware that there was a fatality before the junction was improved. But I have demonstrated to you through the accepted national means of measuring and predicting what the traffic generation and trip generation from this development would be, accepted by both the highways authorities in this case, and that's unusual. You normally have one highway authority. We've actually got two highway authorities who've considered safety in this case, and they both accept the evidence that's been put before them, which is that because our residents can't drive, the only people generating movements will be staff and visitors, and the estimate, based on that nationally accepted standard, is 6 traffic movements per hour in the peak hour. That's been accepted by all of the people involved, your own statutory consultees and the experts who've provided that information using national standards. Now, 6 vehicles in the peak hour, so less during the non-peak hours, as I said earlier on, is only 1 car every 10 minutes. Even if all of them came from the A47 or used the A47, that's a very low level of impact. And the comment you heard earlier on about causing a tail back to the A47, 1 car every 10 minutes cannot generate a tail back. This has been massively exaggerated, and your own experts, the council's experts, both the Highway Authority and the County Council, have found that there is no highway safety impact from this development.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Wilkinson, then Councillor Clark and Councillor Kyerbird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have 2 questions, and I will, if you'll indulge me, put an opinion in as have you heard from another councillor. Isn't policy HOU 5 brought in to add where it's outside the application, outside the settlement boundary? If a property joins a boundary, doesn't that come under HOU 5? And the other question was, if we're minded to approve this application, would the gentleman over the corner there, living there next door, would there be a boundary built for him and that sort of thing? And that's my 2 questions. And the other one is I've always said that junctions and roads are not dangerous, it's the drivers. And Tony Needham pinpointed that straight away. Not the junction. He said the junction was dangerous, but he emphasised it's the drivers, which he agrees with what I'm saying. Traffic movement, as the gentleman over there said, the type of residence that's in there, which will be similar to the home I'm aware of in Griston, which is 12 miles away from any facilities. There's never any patients need to be able to walk to anywhere when they're in that situation. They've not necessarily got family that's going to visit every day, every week, so therefore there's not going to be that amount of traffic movements. I'm surmising that, as everybody else has surmised, what could happen. I haven't heard any objections with planning policies.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll accumulate things because with a response to How 5, and also I'm pretty sure I'm right in the compensation issue is not a planning issue, but it's something that possibly the residents could associate with the developers. I've got Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's really a sort of comment, if you'll indulge me, rather than an actual question. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, firstly, I'd say we've talked about the need for care. I don't think anyone disputes the need for additional care facilities in both the locality and the county. I'm very much aware of that from my past professional background of 30 years in the NHS, including working for the Care Quality Commission and also registering hundreds of nursing homes. I've also got a relative, distant but elderly relative in a local care home, so I'm fully aware of the different variabilities in the different care homes in the locality. If you had asked me to look at the map and say, can you think of anywhere which is less suitable to site a care home, it would be this. I can think of an area of Dereham where Quebec Hall, where there was resistance to reducing the speed limit to 40, and because one of the arguments was, well, there haven't been any fatalities. Sometimes you need to take preemptive action. So I think the fact that there is a shortage of proper and decent care facilities, I don't think one disputes that, is not necessarily an argument for discounting the powerful arguments put forward by the objectors in terms of not just the parking spaces, Councillor will refer to the actual amenities of the garden and noise, but also the traffic, which is that Drayton Hall Lane is an entry and exit point coming in and out of Dereham, irrespective of the care home, people going across the A47. In first time, I think, in 8 years on the planning committee will be where I, on this occasion, are probably going to be going against the advice or discounting the advice of the statutory consultees and particularly highways. Whilst I'm happy to look any planning inspector in the face, I also don't want to be in a position where I'm having to read about something unfortunate at an inquest. One fatality is too much. So I accept the genuine intentions of parties concerned, including our Office of Planning officers, but I can't support this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Short of getting a crook and pulling you off, that's enough. Councillor Khyber, do you have a question, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder whether sufficient emphasis or consideration has been given to the comments of the Housing Enabling Officer, who states that regarding Part B of HOW 9, this is on the edge of a higher order settlement and it's for the decision maker to decide if this paragraph is satisfactory. Similarly, C is engaged and is for the decision maker to comment on suitability of access, etc., given the proximity of the A47. And regarding D, provided the decision maker is satisfied this meets the requirements of planning class C2, then no affordable housing would be required.
Yeah, do you want me to come back, Chairman? Please. Yeah, no, in terms of the comments from the Housing Enabling Officer, yeah, I think obviously highlighted those criteria. I mean, in terms of B, you know, as set out in the report, and as mentioned earlier, it is on the edge of a market town, so it sits at the higher end of the approach to where we want to locate things like this. You know, it's on the edge of the town. Dereham, it's one of the market towns, as we can see. In terms of the emphasis there about what he's saying is, does it comply? I mean, you know, as we previously set out, mean, the terms there, it does say within. In this instance, as highlighted, it's outside but immediately adjoining, and that's where the need comes as an important material consideration. In terms of the other criteria, I don't see where access is referred to in criteria C or D, so I wasn't quite sure where that, in terms of his comments there, in terms of relevance. It does refer to character and amenity. And in terms of D, in terms of the affordable aspect of it, yeah, I mean, it's highlighted and set out in the description. It is specifically for C2. It's, as you've seen from the drawings and explained by the applicants, it is distinctly a residential institution kind of a use. So it's not C3. It's not a dwelling, and therefore we wouldn't secure affordable provision in such case.
So my experience of care homes is that those living in the care home are often visited by able-bodied friends of a similar age who most often get there on foot or even with a mobility scooter. So I think we do need to assess whether the access is suitable for visitors, not just in terms of cars.
Thank you. I'll come back with that. I need an answer on that K5. I've got Councillor Atwell coming back.
Yeah, Chris, could you just clarify? I think you said earlier on that you wouldn't be requiring any developer contribution on this, but reading the letter from the Norfolk and Waveney Integrated Care System about the impact on the primary care system locally, quite clearly they're saying that the proposal would have an impact on healthcare provision in the area, and its implications, if unmitigated, would be unsustainable. So we're looking here at the moment to add pressure to an already stressed primary care system in Dereham. And I do know from my own experience and my own patch that doctor surgeries in particular have to have quite a lot of input into care homes, and it is a large drain on their resources. We're not asking for any provision in here to try and help them improve primary care facilities within the town. Is that just because this is based as a C2 application, C2 class? And I'm just wondering, have we actually taken any account of that? It's a bit like the analogy of keep filling the bath up and eventually the water comes over the top unless you do something to stop it. What account are we as the planning department, planning committee, expected to take of that? To me, that's really important, and that letter was very comprehensive from them, I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, no, just coming back to that, in terms of, I did refer to the NHS Trust comments and talk through some of the issues that we considered earlier on today in terms of the impacts here. I think bottom line is we need to have regard to the test in the MPPF and the SIL regs in terms of how we can secure them. There's the test there. And as mentioned, in our view, when we've considered what's been put forward by the NHS Trust in, they've said that there will be an impact, but in terms of seeking a financial contribution, we also need to understand, well, how would that be used? What kind of project would that be put towards? We need to make sure that there is a justification, reasonable likelihood that will meet the need. There's a project there to address that. That wasn't put forward by the NHS Trust in this regard. And as mentioned, we do often secure these contributions. And the problem was in this instance, when we have regard to those tests, we also have regard to what the facility being proposed here is in terms of the need that this would generate in terms of care needs or impacts on those services. We've also had regard to what the facility is in terms of the day-to-day care that will be provided by staff members, and what that will reduce and mitigate the impacts on those services. But also, it's also a consideration when we assess impacts on health services. Is, well, actually, what is this growth? Is this additional residents in terms of the local area? Now, in this regard, as I say, it's a use that's specifically looking at acute care provision. Dementia care has been referenced, but there's no requirement for that. But there'll be a requirement to provide that care, and often, from the evidence submitted, is a lot of that, not 100%, but there will be a lot of that coming from the local community in terms of being referred to the facility. So, in terms of the impacts, it's not new residents and the growth in that regard. So, as I touched on previously and just now, we've had to have regard to those considerations as well. So that's where, as officers, we've had regard to the tests that also always bound us in terms of securing those. And, as officers, we didn't feel that met the tests in this instance.
Thank you. Did I have a response to Councillor Wilkinson's clarification on the 05? Can I, please? Oh, you're doing it. Thank you.
Yeah, so I did set out earlier very quickly, policy HAL 5 is specifically in relation to residential dwellings. So if they were C3, then you would consider policy HAL 5 and you would consider rounding off and infilling, which arguably is rounding off the site. However, because they're C2, not C3, then I'm, like Councillor Atterwell said, that's a housing policy, so I don't think it's relevant. I think it's HAL 9 that you need to consider. Just to add to the, for members' benefit, is that when you're considering planning obligations, you have to consider 3 elements. So they have to be necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, directly related to the development, and fairly and reasonably related in scale and kind to the development. So although we've had a request for a planning obligation, we always consider those 3 matters before we actually request one. And of particular reference, there's been 2 High Court challenges, specifically regards requests for NHS contributions, including Market Harborough, where it has cast significant doubt over the NHS and their request for contributions and whether development should pay those developer requests. And that is because there is external funding available for many of the NHS projects that are locally, and therefore to get money through the planning system would be double counting those funds, and therefore not necessary to make the planning development acceptable. And also this matter which Chris has just set out about, whether there is existing care on the site, and therefore are you actually adding to an increased need in the local area for care, or is there that need that's existing in the area? The NHS are using the planning system to get additional funds to support them. So the Harborough decision went to High Court and was dismissed by the inspector on the NHS contribution was dismissed by the inspector, and there's been a more recent decision in one of the London suburbs which reiterated the fact, which has cast significant doubt over requesting NHS contributions, and therefore Chris has made that careful assessment and deemed that the contributions aren't necessary for the reasons that he set out.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's time that we made a decision on this particular item. We've had a good thrashing on it. So we're going to take a vote on application 9D, which is 3PL 2022-1220 in outline format for Scarning. Your officer's recommendation on this one is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? 5. And those against? 6. Okay. It's lost by 1 vote. Can I have from the floor your way forward from this, please?
Chairman, if I may, would you allow us to ask the solicitor for some advice with this, please, in terms of the wording?
Well, you can assist if you wish.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Rebecca has already pointed to the fact that it is a matter of committee discretion on the HOU Criteria B issue. Officers concluded, for the reasons very clearly set out in the report, that it was their opinion, our opinion, that other material considerations outweigh the fact that this is contrary to HOU 9 criteria B, but if I'm not mistaken, listening to what has been said, I would propose, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that the reason is that contrary to HOU 9 criteria B, the proposal is outside the settlement boundary, and members do not agree, particularly by reason of its position so far from amenities and so close to the A47, that other material considerations outweigh this conflict with the Breckland local plan. That is what I'm hearing, but that is for you to agree with or not.
Are you accepting of that? Councillor Attewell?
As always, eloquently put. Couldn't put it better myself, and I would like to propose the refusal on that basis.
Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Clark? Sorry, no, you can't. Sorry? No, the chairman didn't vote, but the chairman can vote if he wished. And what I use, I would have a balanced vote if it's needed. Lost my drift. Okay, so Councillor Clark seconded that. All right, can I have a show of hands, please, that you wish to refuse this application?
For that reason.
For that reason. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. And those against the recommendation of refusal? 3. Yeah, we're going to. Okay, this item is lost, I'm afraid. Thank you very much. We're just going to have a 10-minute break, if you don't mind. So looking at the clock, we'll be back just before 12, allowing the members just to grab a quick coffee, and then we will be going straight into doing Yaxham. So anyone listed to speak for Yaxham who have requested, you can come back in and make your seat.
sufficient. Now,
Okay, we're nearly there, guys. Are we recording to the world? I shall get my okay in a moment. While we're setting the recording in place, I do need the speakers for the Yaxham application to come forward. I've got, I hate saying this because I always get it wrong. Yes, well done, Maggie. Is that how you pronounce it, Maggie? Gary Osborne, who's the Yaxham Neighbourhood Plan Working Group. I've got Chris Cooves and Ian Martin, objectors, 1.5 minutes each. Kai Gibson, who's an applicant, and Councillor Paul Plummer, who... Are you crossing the floor, Paul? Oh, right, okay. That's Mr. Cooves, yeah? Would you, Councillor Plummer, would you like to clarify that with the solicitor?
No, he has. He's crossing the floor.
Crossing the floor?
He's crossing the floor.
Okay.
Yep.
Please do. Take a seat.
Oh, 12 o'clock. Yeah, she did say she...
Yeah, she had to go. Yeah, she had to go. And we will be losing the Taylor sisters at about 20 to 1, I think. Thank you. Over to you, please, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is an application to vary the Section 106 agreement for a previous outline application granted planning permission to vary the affordable housing contribution from 40% to 25%. Please note, members, that since the report was published, we've had 3 additional letters of objection objecting to the reduction of affordable housing for the reasons already summarised in the report. We've also had objections, as you'll see from the report, from Yaxham Parish Council, the CPRE, and, like I say, 12 letters of objection in total since the application has been received. So here is the application site marked by the red line boundary shown on the screen in front of you. This is the red line boundary that was part of the outline planning permission and the reserve matters planning permission, and the site does have outline and reserve matters planning permission to build dwellings in this location. So the reduction in affordable housing from 40% to 25% would bring the development in line with the current local plan policy, which is policy HOW 07 of your local plan. And this policy was underpinned by the council's own viability assessment, which showed that developments at 25% affordable provision were viable. You'll note from the officer report that a number of the letters of objection mention an appeal that made reference to the 40% affordable housing. This appeal was for a reserve matters appeal on the reserve matters application, and therefore didn't look at the Section 106 or the principal matters related to affordable housing, because that'd be a wrong for a reserve matters appeal. And no reference was made in that appeal at all about 40% affordable housing, so it would be wrong to conclude that that was a significant material consideration in that appeal. And also, at the time of the decision for the outline planning permission, weight was not given to 40% affordable housing because this was policy compliant at the time of the decision on the outline planning application. So neither way was the 40% overriding in terms of granting planning permission for this site. The applicants have submitted information which has been summarised in the officer report in support of the application, including setting out that any profit made from this development site will be invested back into affordable housing across the district, given that the applicants are an affordable housing provider. Members will also note paragraph 58 of the NPPF, which states that development should be considered viable if it is policy compliant. As set out previously, the 25% proposed as part of this application is policy compliant in accordance with our own current adopted policy, which is policy HOW 07 of the local plan. On this basis, and similar to other applications exactly like it, which have also been recommended for approval, we are recommending this application for approval with delegation to enter into a deed of variation to reduce the affordable housing from 40% to 25%. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Plummer, would you like to go first or last? Okay, fine. Okay, so we've got the Chairman of Yaxham Parish Council. If you'd like your 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Chairman and committee. My name is Maggie Uxler, which the Chairman could never say, but anyway, that's who I am, and I'm Chairman of Yaxham Parish Council, and we would like to thank both our ward councillors for calling in this application and for speaking today. And particular thanks to Ian, who has made a huge effort to come this morning. All of us are very aware of the village anger that a registered social landlord is trying to renege on an obligation freely given to provide much needed 40% affordable housing on this site. The Reserved Matters application in 2018, as you know, was refused by Breckland and Flagship appealed. The inspector's decision came in December 2020, allowing the development in accordance with the terms of the January 2018 application. The affordable 40% obligation is clearly stated in that application in the DNA statement by the Housing Enabling Officer, as well as the officer report, which mentions the actual mix of 17 affordable units. This application is different from other similar ones trying to reduce the affordable housing to 25% because the appeal inspector was told in 2020 by Flagship's legal team that the 40% would be retained. In the current documents from Flagship, there is an accommodation schedule dated 14th of September this year showing 17 affordable units. And as Rebecca has said this morning, this is what's in front of you. There is no indication of any future new housing mix or indication of which of the affordable units could be lost by any reduction in number. Flagship has given an undertaking for 40% and should be required to adhere to all the Section 106 obligations. This application is now the 14th for this site. You could well ask Flagship, and you may in a minute, why the site remains a green field after nearly a decade when permissions have been granted, but not a single dwelling is anywhere on the horizon. For these reasons, the present application should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I've got Gary Osborne, please, who's Yaxham Neighbourhood Plan Working Group representative. 3 minutes as well, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and councillors. I shouldn't need 3 minutes. I think Maggie summed it up very well. Good morning. I'm Gary Osborne, Chairman of the Yaxham Neighbourhood Plan Working Group. And thanks for allowing me to speak today. On behalf of the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group, and I believe the residents of Yaxham, we strongly object to the proposed variation to reduce the affordable housing from 40% to 25%. As part of our Neighbourhood Plan 5-year review, we recently conducted a survey of residents locally, and the comments on that survey indicated that there is, and I know you know this, very much a need for affordable housing locally. Therefore, we're not against that, but what we are against is that we believe the development, as Maggie stated, was approved, and in our opinion, highly influenced by the 40% affordable housing that Flagship made a point of promoting as a key factor for the inspector to approve at the time. As a major RSL, we believe Flagship need to honour their original commitment and deliver on what was approved. Planning decisions are often heavily scrutinised and criticised by the general public, some of it justified, some of it not. And with this in mind, we respectfully request that on this occasion it would not be appropriate to approve the variation, particularly as the original application was rejected but overturned on appeal with the benefit to the community of 40% affordable housing. In summary, I believe there's been several objections locally that have been submitted on this, and we hope that the local residents' views are taken into consideration and that the condition that the application was granted on in the first instance is maintained. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Ian Martin, who I've never had the opportunity to say that you were very much missed. Last time I think I saw you was actually on a Zoom meeting, so it goes back quite a way. And you were, when you were part of this council and a member of my committee, you were very much a part of that and the process, and brought a very sensible approach to your position at the time. And I'm glad to see you back here, and even though you just broke all my fingers shaking my hand, but welcome back for today at least. Mr. Martin, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that very generous response. As I said at the time, the hand is one of the few things, well, and the mouth, you'll be pleased to know, is still functioning. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Albeit this is one performance only, I'm afraid. And surprisingly enough, I may take a different view from the officers. Yes, there is a clear statement in the report that we're wrong to assume that the appeal that's been referred to gave weight to the 40% provision of affordable housing. However, I actually suggest that is too definitive. It is a view, a perfectly justifiable view, but that it is a subjective judgment, and that the Planning Committee and Planning Committee members are therefore fully within their own rights to decide whether to go with it or to come to a different conclusion. As has already, apologies for some repetition, but as has already been said, the Reserved Matters Application 29 was appealed successfully, and it was under the time of the new local plan. The main mention of the 40% in the submissions to that appeal was by Flagship Homes. It was their commitment. They made it clear they would submit an alternative application if the appeal failed, and the community would lose the benefit of the 40% and be taken down to 25%. So there was no need for them to say so. They gave that commitment at that appeal. The very fact, well, the fact that the inspector may not have specifically referenced it, he did reference the whole of the appealed application and the context of it, which is and was the 40%. There are only two things that come out under the Section 106 agreement for the benefit of Durham. We've heard about fire hydrants before. One fire hydrant and 40% housing. It is a joke that an affordable homes organisation is coming forward to find a way to squirrel out of this particular commitment. It's the applicant's commitments that was in the appeal. It was included as part of the framework of the inspector's decision, and it would be perfectly legitimate for this committee to say, in this instance, different from others where there was no appeal and no other issue on terms of 40% to 25%, but in this particular instance, because of the applicant's own introduction of the subject at the appeal, we call on you to reject this application, or at the very minimum, defer it until you have a full viability statement that explains why 40% in this instance is not viable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Okay, I've got Kai Gibbon, please, who's the applicant. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and councillors. My name is Kai Gibbon, and I'm one of the project managers working for Flagship Housing Developments, part of the wider Flagship Group. Whilst we believe the variation of obligation application is succinct and clear, it may be less so as to why Flagship will ask for a reduction in the number of affordable homes being provided. We need to ensure that all our mixed tenure, all affordable or Section 106 schemes are individually viable. However, the planning approved provision of 40% affordable housing proposed here at Elm Close, Yaxham, means that this scheme is currently not. We have a very good record in Breckland and will continue to do so. Over the last 5 years, Flagship Housing Developments have built 61 homes. We are currently on site building 332 homes and have a future pipeline of 337 homes. We believe this programme, totalling 730 homes, demonstrates our desire and ability to deliver good quality affordable homes in the district. We are committed to delivering affordable housing, and out of the 730 programme above, 626 are either provided in progress or part of our future pipeline as affordable housing, equating to 86%. The lowering of the affordable housing percentage within this planning permission from 40 to 25%, the current policy requirement, will ensure the scheme is viable and removes viability as a factor preventing its delivery. Flagship Housing Developments gifts aids all profits made from residential property sales to Flagship Group, reinvesting where it is needed most to deliver more affordable homes. This is called profit for purpose, and is our intention to provide more. It's ring-fenced for future affordable housing in the district, and we will endeavour, using options available to us, to increase the affordable housing on this scheme back towards 40% as the scheme progresses. In conclusion, Flagship Housing Group is committed to delivering as many good quality affordable homes as possible. Approval of variations such as this maximises our profit for purpose and, in turn, affordable housing in the district. Thank you for your consideration, Mr Chairman and councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Plummer, please. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Can I ask for a 1 minute silence to show the loss of affordable housing? I mean, we spend so much time in this council either paying to build affordable housing or trying to make affordable housing. And here we are, we've had, I don't know what other people think, conflicts. We've had the planning officer say that what Flagship do is reinvest back into affordable homes, the profit they make. We've had the gentlemen who represent them say that. Well, why don't you use that money of profitable to build 40%? Why does Yaxham have to lose that amount of houses so somebody else somewhere else can have the profit from Yaxham? I don't understand this. What I say is that if you read on page 81, there appears there's no guarantee that Flagship will honour the 25%. So we could be here in 6 months' time with, look, it says it here. I don't have to, it's in your thing. So we could come back here with no affordable housing. So what I suggest is that the committee refuses this and let Flagship go to appeal and see if they can get 25% from appeal, because I really don't understand this. We'll now, all of us, will go home tonight, we'll have a tea, we'll go to bed, we'll pull the covers over ourselves and think how warm and cosy we are. But there's a lot of people here who will not get an affordable home, which will not have that quality, will not have that ability to have a nice home. I know for myself, the ones that were built in Mattershall, the affordable ones, the people who went into that come out of some really dire places. They were over the moon. In fact, when I spoke to them, they were nearly crying to say how wonderful it was to have a decent property. Why should Yaxham suffer? Why should they suffer for that profit that's going to be made out of this site to go somewhere else? I don't understand it. We've had both the case officer and the gentleman there say that. The profits will go into more affordable. Well, what do you want to do that for? Please put them in Yaxham. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. OK, it's open to questions from members at all. Councillor Attawell.
There we go. Yeah, thank you. So just to confirm, we've had no viability assessment carried out on this at all. So we've basically got this gentleman's word for the fact that Flagship are too poor to provide the 40% affordable housing. That doesn't seem reasonable. Yes, the 40% housing, in my view, and that's subjective, was definitely detailed in the appeal documentation. That was sent in by Flagship, and I believe that that was a firm undertaking by Flagship, who are an affordable housing provider, to provide affordable housing in Yaxham for residents. So at the very least, I think we should be asking for a viability assessment, whether we defer it and say, no, we actually want you to show us your cards as to why you can't provide this, bearing in mind there was an appeal decision, and I think that's the key here for me. And I was just interested to know, is this still a virgin greenfield site? Yes. So when was planning permission granted? Okay, thank you. So when does the existing, I'd like to know from the officers, when does the existing permission expire? Is that a factor, or do they have sufficient time to do a viability assessment? Because I would certainly like to see that. And I just don't think we should take Flagship's word for it. Also, thank you. Last time I looked, we had 1,600 approximately people on our housing register as Breckland Council. 118 of those were in emergency accommodation or had certainly in emergency need. So we have a definite need, and on behalf of all those people who are on that housing register, I think as a committee we've got a duty to make sure that Flagship's argument here stacks up, because at the moment I've just got the word of this gentleman and absolutely no evidence. Please, can we have the viability assessment at the very least?
Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Attleborough asked the question I was going to ask. If there's no viability assessment, I would move that we defer this application until we actually get a proper independent viability assessment on what is going on in this particular site. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Rebecca, please.
So I remind you, members, that paragraph 58 of the MPPF clearly states that you are not to ask for a viability appraisal when the affordable housing requirement is policy compliant. So the policy is HOW 9, that says 25%. They are offering 25%. So you would be in conflict with paragraph 58 of the MPPF, which says you shouldn't ask for viability appraisals on the basis of that there's a policy compliant offer. Also, we haven't asked for any of the other applications that have varied the affordable housing amount down from 40% to 25% to provide viability information in this regard. Your consideration here is on the basis of whether you have a policy compliant. You have to determine the application in accordance with planning policy. So you have a policy compliant offer of 25%. You have the council's own viability assessment, which you have commissioned as part of the council, which clearly says no more than 25% is viable on a development by development basis. I understand what you're saying about your applicant's word for it, but you have to consider the reasonableness of requesting additional information. So whether it is reasonable or not to request that information. So the applicant, the MPPF tells you it's not reasonable. The applicant would then have to go away and commission that information to be undertaken. He would then have to pay for the council to have that independently assessed, on the basis that you have no policy requirement to ask for that information. I would suggest that it would be inappropriate to ask for that information, and you make your assessment on the basis of whether you consider the reduction of affordable housing is acceptable in line with your current planning policies, taking into account any other material considerations. And other material consideration could be that significant weight was given to 40% in terms of the determination of this application. We have heard about the appeal. I would remind you, members, that that was a reserved matters appeal. Therefore, the inspector would have been unable to consider any matters outside of landscaping, scale, appearance. What's the fourth one? No, he does not, factually does not mention affordable.
Sorry, he does. No, please.
He factually does not make an assessment of affordable housing in that appeal decision. He lists the description of the development, but on a basis of reserved matters appeal, he cannot revisit the principle or the Section 106 agreement within a reserved matters appeal. Therefore, the inspector was unable to take that matter into consideration in the determination of that application, because he could only consider, I'm going to get you the four, it wasn't access, it was the other four: landscaping, appearance, scale, and layout. So apologies, members, apologies. So access was considered at outline application stage. And on that basis, officers are saying in their assessment that the 40% wasn't given significant weight in the determination of the application. It was merely policy compliant when the outline was approved, and it wasn't considered as part of the reserved matters application because you're unable to revisit those principles at that stage. I think there was a question from Councillor Attewell about the has the permission expired? The permission has expired. The original commission has commenced, and therefore the permission is extant. Sorry, my words are. So they have, because the permission's started, there's no time limit on them completing that development, so the permission is extant.
Councillor Attewell.
Can we please understand then, I've got the residents and local people telling me that's a virgin green field. Can you tell me what exactly they've commenced on site to make it extant?
My understanding is that there are garage foundations being poured already to satisfy the planning permission.
Coming back, Councillor Attewell.
Your understanding, or you know?
I can confirm that garage foundations have been poured.
Okay. No further questions then from... No, thank you.
And thank Rebecca Collins for that very full explanation of what is actually going on with this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Plummer, you've done your bit.
Could I please ask the applicant's representative? I'm looking at 1.8 of the officer's report, in which it stated that House Percival LLP submitted a response dated 7th of February 2020 to the refusal of planning permission by Breckland Council to the Planning Inspectorate, in which it states that although 25% affordable housing is sought in the adopted local plan, the RMA proposes 40% in accordance with the Section 106 agreement of 7th of January 2016. So, unless I'm mistaken, at that time there was a clear policy of affordable housing of 25%. Yet lawyers on behalf of the RMA are asking the planning inspectorate whether it is relevant or not, and whether the planning inspector can take that into account, as Becky has clearly stated. They're making an argument here that, are they not, that it is an advantage in this matter, that that they're saying that the planning inspectorate should take this into account as a material consideration, that they're offering over 15% more than they were actually obliged to by policy at the time. Sorry, very long-winded question. So my question is, how's Percival, on behalf of the RMA, are making this representation? Do you not accept the fact that this is something that would have been taken account by the planning inspectorate at the time to reach their decision? Why would House Percival have made that representation otherwise?
To be perfectly honest, I don't know the true reasoning why that presentation was, or that representation was made. However, I could say that the ability of Flagship to provide 40% housing at that time financially may have been significantly different to what it is today. But without knowing and conferring with House Percival, I wouldn't be able to comment any further than that.
So my response to that is that is a very reasonable point that you make, and I do apologise. I didn't mean in any way to put you in a difficult position. But I myself, as a lawyer, think I would like to know why House Percival made that representation to the planning inspectorate if it wasn't to persuade them to grant planning permission. And I think until we know that, I think it would be reasonable for the councillors to say, perhaps we need to know why your lawyers were making this representation in order to get planning permission, if actually it wasn't to be taken into account by the inspectorate, whatever the decision notice says. Do you think that's fair?
I can agree with your comment.
Okay, I think that's quite obvious, members, where we're going with this. Sorry, Councillor Kittle-Morris again.
Can I make a comment? Although the Breckland solicitor has made a valid point, unless we know what deliberation was going on in the inspector's mind as a result of that comment, we can't actually come to a conclusion.
That's exactly where we're going. Right, members, it's my advice to you that we defer this item. Could I have a show of hands, please? And against? Oh, okay. All right, this item's deferred. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, for turning you out today, but we can't proceed any further. Okay, thank you. No, thank you. Okay, we're now losing 2 members. Thank you for attending. Okay, yeah, we've got plenty of time. So we're going to go and do Rocklands now, which is 9C.
All right, we've got enough space.
As we slightly clear the room. That's 3PL 2023-0702. We need David Howie, who's the chairman of Rocklands Parish Council, to come and sit on the right-hand side. We need... Oh, thank you. See you later, Ian. Joseph Kemp, who's an objector. Ollie Jones, who's the agent, and James and Lisa Tubby, who are the applicants. If you'd like to come and sit on the right-hand side, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, where are we going, Rockland?
Yeah, Rockland, so
Cool.
What are we doing?
We've got a whole load.
Oh my God, there is a residence.
Is everyone speaking?
Okay, before you make yourselves comfy, those registered to speak are David Howie, Chairman of Breckland Parish Council. That's you, sir. You're fine. Joseph Kemp, who's an objector. You're fine. Ollie Jones, who's the agent. You're down there. And James and Lisa Tubby. There, you're there. Right. If your name hasn't been called, I do appreciate you being here, but could I ask you to go and sit back where you were? I do apologise, but it causes a lot of confusion and we end up filling up all the unnecessary seats. But thank you anyway. Okay, terrific. Right, over to you then, please, Matthew.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Just going to load up the presentation. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. So this is a planning application for one dwelling with a cart lodge, stables and paddocks. This is situated within the parish of Breckland, and this is situated on Bell Road and Chapel Street. Okay, so here we've got the location plan. So as you can see, we've got the site location here within red, and then we've also got a wider blue line which represents wider land ownership. So this is Chapel Street, and you go into Bell Road here. You've got a number of dwellings that are situated to the south of the site, and then you've also got a farmstead to the west. And then this is the site in the wider context. So as you can see, this is Chapel Street, Bell Road, and then this is the site. So this is the site here within red, and then there was wider blue, the wider land ownership situated here. Okay, so as you'll be aware, Breckland, so when it comes to new housing within the district, there is the settlement hierarchy which is identified under policy Gen 03. So we direct development towards more sustainable locations within the district. So Breckland itself is classified as a village with boundaries. So there is a defined settlement boundary, and policy Gen 05 directs new development inside of settlement boundaries. However, where development is situated outside of settlement boundaries, there are policies that can be engaged to assess new housing. So in this instance, as Breckland is classified as a village with boundaries, it therefore means policy HOU 4 is the relevant policy here. So within Breckland, there is Breckland All Saints and Breckland St. Peter. So the site is within the area for Breckland St. Peter. So this is the defined settlement boundary. So the area in red is the defined settlement boundary itself for Breckland St. Peter. So when it comes to policy HOU 4, the criteria is that you have to be immediately adjacent to the settlement boundary. So as you can see, this is the site here. I put a star here just to represent the site. You've then got the road here. So, so starting where the red line is for the location plan, which starts here. The site is considered to be 5 metres away from the settlement boundary, and as it's not physically touching the settlement boundary itself, it therefore is considered not to be immediately adjacent. And then following that, there is also a 4-step criteria to also assessing any new housing. So the first one is the development is of an appropriate scale and design to the settlement. This will be, I will discuss this later, but we consider this not to be either an appropriate scale or design for the settlement. The next one is that it would not lead to the number of houses within the settlement boundary increasing significantly more than 5% from the date of the adoption of the local plan. So Breckland has exceeded its 5% target, and it is considered that the approval of a new dwelling would further exceed this target. So therefore it fails on part 2. The next part is the design contributes to preserving and where possible enhancing the historic nature and connectivity of communities, and we consider due to concerns with the design and scale, it therefore does not preserve or enhance the area. And then the final one is it's avoiding the coalescence of settlements, and we can confirm that there won't be the coalescence with other settlements, so therefore it is acceptable against part 4. But however, due to it not being immediately adjacent and also the design and the housing target number, it therefore is considered to be unacceptable against policy HOU 4, and therefore we are unable to establish the principal development, and where the principal development can't be established, this is considered to be fundamental, and for that reason, it is unacceptable. So moving on to the proposed site plan. So you've got the proposed dwelling that is situated here with the private garden area and patio area. The cart lodge is going to be situated here. You've got the private stables situated here with paddocks and a menage situated here. And then you've got a proposed new access onto Chapel Street and Bell Road that is situated here. So just to run, I just want to confirm that the stables themselves will be for private use only, and there will be no commercial use. If the application were to be approved, this is something that we can condition to ensure that it's private use only and there's to be no commercial use. We have consulted our environmental health team, and they have raised no objection to the stables subject to conditions, and it is also common within the district for there to be private stables, paddocks and menages situated within the curtilage for residential dwellings, and therefore we have no objection to the stables aspect to the development itself. And then just moving on to the proposed elevations. So here it will be a two-storey dwelling. So as you can see, you've got the, this is the principal elevation, so this will front onto Chapel Street and Bell Road. You've got the rear elevation here, which will front out onto open fields, and then you've got the two side elevations that are situated here. And then these are the proposed floor plans. So these are the ground floor. This is the ground floor plans, and then this is the first floor plans, and there are 4 bedrooms proposed. These are the cart lodge elevations, and then the floor plans here. These are the proposed stable plans, and then the proposed stable floor plans here. And then these are the proposed menage elevations and plans here as well. And then this is the riding arena floor plan here. So as mentioned, when assessing it against policy HOU4, we do hold concerns with the proposed dwelling. We do consider that the proposed dwelling will be of an unacceptable mass, scale and height. So Bell Road and Chapel Street is characterised by single-storey bungalows and older styled cottages. We do consider that the design will be at odds with the area, and it won't be in keeping with the character of the area. Furthermore, we do consider that the site does add to the landscape value of the area, and therefore it is considered to be open countryside, and as it is open countryside, it is an important element of the character of the area. And so for this reason, we do consider that building a dwelling within the site will be considered as erosion of the open countryside and will represent an unacceptable visual intrusion. So if I just go back to the first photo, so this is sort of looking down into the site, and then this is looking along the road, so this is looking towards Chapel Street from Bell Road, and as you can see, you've got the existing residential dwellings here, and as you can see, the height of them is single-storey or 1.5-storey. And then this is looking more, again, into the open countryside. And then this is looking down into Bell Road itself. So the application before you has been recommended for refusal. It's been recommended on refusal on two grounds. The first being it is not considered acceptable in principle, and then the next one is it's unacceptable in terms of design and appearance, having an impact on the character and appearance of the area. I would just like to note that the third reason for refusal that was originally noted in the officer report regarding GI Round's contribution, there was a supplementary report. So we have received a draft unilateral undertaking, and we've also received the required monitoring and administration fees. And as a result, we consider that to be acceptable. So that reason for refusal has been dropped. And also, just to finally note, both the Highways Authority and Breckland's ecological consultant have raised no objection to the scheme as well. So we've got no objection in terms of highway safety, and we've also got no objection in terms of impact on ecological considerations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got David Howie, please, who's the chairman of Rocklands Parish Council. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. My name's David Howie. I'm the chairman of Rocklands Parish Council, and I'm here on behalf of the council to object to this planning application for the following reasons. The proposed site at Bell Road is located outside the settlement boundary. Breckland Council have acknowledged that Rockland is already significantly in excess of its housing allocation, as referenced in policy HOU 04 and set out in Appendix 5 of the current local plan, and have refused previous applications on that basis. Rocklands Parish councillors are of the opinion that this very large size character of this proposed dwelling is disproportionate to that of surrounding properties and would significantly impact their views across a narrow country lane over fields to the mere, with the 2 fishing lakes and forest, which is an idyllic scene. And the current greater landscape visibility would be significantly compromised in this respect. This is contrary to HOU 04 and paragraph 3.22 of the current local plan. We are aware that there is some support for this application, but it certainly does not come from the residents of Bell Road. And some of the comments of support are made by people not living in the parish. The residents of Bell Road, who live directly opposite the site of this proposed development, all object strongly to this application. And as they are the ones directly affected by it, we, as a parish council, must accept their views and concerns. And for these reasons, Breckland Parish Council cannot support this application and must object. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I've got Joseph Kemp, please, who's an objector. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, officers, committee. My name is Joe Kemp, and I speak on behalf of Bell Road Residents Group, which was formed in response to this application. We wholeheartedly support Matthew Blackie's recommendation to refuse this application, which is contrary to policy and would set a dangerous precedent if approved. One only has to look at the number of objections from local residents, including from the parish council, who represent the local community, to see that this development is not supported by the village. It is worth noting that while Matthew's report mentions 18 letters of support for this application, 2 of these are duplicates, and all but 5 are from people who do not even live in Rocklands. They are clearly from friends who have been canvassed for their support, 2 from as far afield as Suffolk, and none who would be affected in any way. Matthew's report accurately summarises the numerous planning reasons for refusal, so I will not repeat them here. However, I would like to highlight a few additional points which may not have been clear from his report. Firstly, the proposal description is misleading in that it suggests that the dwelling is needed to accommodate an equestrian business, which could potentially have been permissible under HOU 13, rural workers' dwellings. However, there is clearly no intention to run a business of any form on this site, and the house is not an equestrian dwelling, but simply an excessively large private home with facilities to accommodate horses for the applicant's personal enjoyment. The proposals must therefore meet HOU 04, and put simply, they do not. HOU 04 allows for some additional housing growth adjacent to settlement boundaries, provided a development does not lead to an increase in the number of dwellings of more than 5%. Rocklands has already exceeded this figure and does not need any more housing. Even if this were not the case, the site is not adjacent to the settlement boundary and would be entirely incongruous in the landscape. As a resident of Bell Road, Like my neighbours, I enjoy the open aspect to the north of my home, with its expansive views over the countryside. This is an important part of the local landscape, with the north side of Bell Road largely undeveloped. The application contains no proposed landscaping nor an assessment of landscape impact, and it is a shame to see this given so little thought, given the prominent position of the proposal. Breckland has already over-delivered in terms of rural housing. There is simply no justification for this new dwelling in the countryside. If we approve this application for an executive home in the open countryside, when there are already more than enough new homes in the village and wider district, how can we reasonably refuse other similar proposals in the future? I would urge members to consider the precedent that this would set and to heed Mr Blackie's recommendation of refusal.
Thank you. Okay, we go on to, Mr Jones, the agent. Are you speaking or just you? Okay, if you'd like to switch your microphone on. No, try the other one. Oh, you've still got yours on, sorry. No, it's because that one was on, don't worry. If you want 3 Toblerones, that's fine.
Well, yeah, why not?
Okay, far away.
Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, Chairman. I'm not going to sit here and quote lots of different facts and figures to you about policies. You've heard lots about policies today and in the last few representations. Quite simply, this is one singular dwelling in Rocklands. There are no statutory consultees that have objected to this. All the reports and details submitted have been agreed and approved, including the GI RAMs and the nutrient neutrality issues. The dwellings opposite have a higher roof height than this that's proposed for this dwelling because they sit higher up on land. The dwelling proposes a 2-storey dwelling and will not exceed the height of the dwellings opposite. The dwelling is designed to utilise Mr Tubby's skill set and provide additional work for construction workers in the local area, which is currently lacking in Norfolk, as you'll have seen in the press. The dwelling is located outside of the development boundary, but in line with along with a built development along the road and along the street, there are houses opposite and around the dwelling, as you have seen in Matthew's report. The dwelling is situated so there is room around the dwelling to locate the horses. It is to be located on paddocks, all of which require approximately 1 acre per horse to be adequately grazed and rotated within the season. This is what the dwelling is designed around. There will be no more than 4 horses at the dwelling at any one point. This is all for personal use. There is no desire to run a business from this premises, and that has been made clear in all of the documents submitted. Any additional conditions required to support this would be welcomed. The development boundary does not take into account people wanting to have equestrian dwellings, and there are policies, as you've heard, for rural workers, agricultural dwellings, self-build, social housing, open market housing, but there is no policy for an equestrian dwelling such as this. So the point where equestrian dwellings do not hold a use class and a classification, such as many people believe, equestrian is not agricultural and therefore does not meet any of these policies. This is why it's been called in front of you today by Mr Rob Walker. No dwelling with this need can be allocated to a policy. There is no allowance within the settlement boundary for a dwelling of this size, particularly with the need for horses to be located around it. A search was conducted within 20 miles of this location, and there were 3 dwellings outside of 10 miles of this location. There are no equestrian dwellings for sale, there is no land for sale that would support this, and there is no policy in place that would support anywhere else for this development to take place. The application was put in front of you today simply because there is no policy for this. It is up to you to make a decision on whether you feel this is relevant, and this would not set a precedent because it is one singular dwelling on its own. The size and scale has been noted, and should it be a primary concern of yours, we'd be happy to amend this if the principle of this dwelling is acceptable. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's open to questions from members. No one want to ask a question? Right, that's fine. Okay, so with regard to this, which is Rocklands 3PL 2023-0702, this is a full application. Your officer's recommendation is one of refusal. Could I have a show of hands, please? Okay, that's it. That's unanimous. This item is refused. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, members, I'm going to ask you to indulge me. We have one application left. If you'd please allow us to hear this last application, then we can break for lunch. Okay, lunch is provided today, by the way. Okay, thank you. So we're going to go to Munford.
Take it with me.
Munford 3PL 2023-0161. This is a full application. I've got Kieran Long, who's an objector. Sorry about this while we're clearing the room. Kieran Long. And I've also got Nick Brown on behalf of the Munford Football Club, who are the applicants. Okay, guys, well done. Over to you then, please, Matthew. Right, thank you.
Okay, so this is the last plan application. So this is for the development of a new two-storey sports facility with a ground floor club room and changing rooms, members' room on the first floor, and a new overflow car park. This is situated on the recreational grounds or the playing fields for within the parish of Munford, and the applicant is Munford Football Club, and this is also in conjunction with the Village Hall. So just before we start, I would like to just mention that we did receive one letter of objection. This has been received since the publication of the officer report, and so I'm just going to summarise the objection just before we go into the presentation. So the objection states that the area redevelopment stated in the planning application is scrubland, as scrubland is not scrubland. It is a small woods with many substantial trees and many smaller trees. And there are concerns over the removal of trees from this area. There are also concerns over ecological impact arising from the development. And then there's also to say that the woodlands can be seen from all of the surrounding properties. And finally, there are concerns over flooding for all of the surrounding area properties and the playing fields. Okay. Okay, so this is the location plan. So just starting off here, so this is where the proposed pavilion is going to be situated, and then there's a footpath that runs along the recreational ground, and then the area here in red is the proposed overflow car park. So the blue line represents wider ownership. So this is recreational ground, and then this is also recreational ground itself. And then this is the existing car park. I'd like to just note that there are residential dwellings situated along the boundaries here, and there's also situated along the boundaries here, and access to the site itself is from the existing access which is situated here, and this is along St. Leonard Street. And then this is just given the wider site context. So again, as you can see, existing car park, Village Hall. You've got all of the residential dwellings that are situated along the boundary, and then you've also got, there is cricket provisions here. This is where the football club operates from, and then this is where the proposed overflow car park is, the footpath, and then this is where the proposed sports pavilion will be situated. Already covered this one. Okay, so here is the proposed site and block plan. So as you can see, this is where the pavilion is proposed to be, and then you've got a wooded area that is situated to the rear of it, and then this is where the football pitch is itself. And then these are the proposed elevations. So this is the front elevation that will front onto the football pitch. And then this is the rear elevation. And then you've got the two side elevations situated here. So this is the proposed ground floor plan. So as you can see, this is going to be used for the football club itself. So you've got changing rooms here. You've got a laundry room here with, you've also got referee changing rooms that are here. The club room is going to be here with the bar. There's going to be a storage area. And then there's also going to be disabled access to the first floor, which is the members' room. And you've also got stair access here as well. And there's also going to be a balcony which fronts onto the football club itself. And then here are just some proposed projections just to give you an idea what the development will look like. Okay, so just to start to put it into policy context, so regarding the principle of development, it should be noted that the playing fields themselves are identified as open space, and policy EMV 04 of the local plan requires the protection of open space and does restrict development on them. However, this is subject to criteria. So okay, so as set out in the officer report, we do consider that the pavilion itself is going to be of a community facility, and policy COM 04 of the Breckland local plan does support the creation, enhancement and expansion of community facilities. So because it's going to be situated on open space itself, there is a criteria within EMV 04 that does permit for development where it's in the benefit of the community. So we do consider that this is going to be a community benefit itself. So whilst it is acknowledged that there will be some loss of open space, we do consider it to be in the wider community benefit, and it will also be supporting other existing recreational uses. So as officers, we do consider that Munford Football Club does have a community purpose, and it does benefit the wider community. And so for that reason, that's why we are supportive of the application against both COM 04 and EMV 04. The MPPF does also require the protection of open space. So where there is going to be the loss of any playing or recreational fields, Sports England does have to be consulted. So Sports England were consulted, and they did raise no objection because they do consider it to be for recreational benefits. They also did consult the Football Foundation. So the Football Foundation did review the plans and to make sure that all of the proposal will be Football Association policy compliant. So after some redesigns, we are satisfied that the pavilion itself does meet the requirements as set out by the Football Foundation, and so therefore we do consider their concerns have been overcome. The reasons for the pavilion is to help Munford Football Club with its expansion and to help it progress through the Football Association, and where there is the progress through the Football Association, they do hope to offer and continue to expand their offerings in terms of what they are able to provide for the local community. So that's why we are supportive of it in principle. We also got no concerns over the proposed design itself. Regarding the impact on amenity, so we did consult environmental health, so they would have assessed potential noise impact arising from the development and other environmental health related matters, including odour, light pollution. So I can confirm that they did raise no objection subject to a condition, and this condition related to the air source heat pump. They would like to see details to be submitted. As officers, we have spoken to the football club, and we have gained an understanding on what the current operations are, and we have imposed a time restriction condition so that this pavilion use can only be used when the football club is operating, and the football club have confirmed that they don't intend to increase the operations. The pavilion is just to help with the operations of the existing football club. In terms of highways, there was no objection from highways. So the overflow car park, we have done the assessment as officers, and it is detailed within 4.3 of the officer report. We do consider that the minimum parking standards have been met, including cycle and also disabled parking provisions. So for that reason, we do consider that the pavilion will not have an impact on highway safety. The next thing I'd like to just cover is there were concerns raised about the impact on trees. So as part of the application, we did request for a tree survey to be submitted, and the tree officer at Breckland Council was consulted. They have raised no objection subject to a condition for all construction works to take place in accordance with the tree survey. The next thing that was raised as concern by the local community and Munford Parish Council was due to concerns over flooding. So it is acknowledged that there is an area of low surface water flood risk on the site itself. However, the area within red, the sports pavilion, is situated outside of that, area. We have spoken to a flooding specialist, and they did say that they had no objection to the proposal, subject to a surface water condition, and they also recommended a foul water drainage condition as well, as it's not known specifically the existing drains, and we would like to have further details submitted if it were to be approved. But they did consider that there were comments about flooding and ordnance survey maps. What we would just like to stress is that we are going based upon the Environmental Agency flooding mapping, and we do consider this to be the most up-to-date flooding information. And then finally, I'd like to just touch upon ecological considerations. So the comments regarding ecological considerations are noted, and officers would like to request for the matters to be delegated to officers, as we would like to request some further information, but we do consider this as something that can be overcome. And finally, Natural England were consulted, as the area does fit within the stone curlew buffer zone and the Breck Special Protection Area. Stone curlews are a protected species, and Natural England did raise no objection to the scheme. So just moving on to the site photos, you can see this is the football pitch here, and this is the wooded area, and these are some of the residential dwellings that are on the boundary. And then just another picture of that. This is just a further shot, so this is where some of the cricket provisions are, and this is where the footpath will start to run along, and that's the wooded area there. And then that's just looking at the cricket provisions. This is the existing village hall, so the current existing facilities for the football club are situated within the village hall itself. And then this is just looking, so you can see there's a play area, and then around the corner is where the parking provision, car park is, and then just looking back onto where the wooded area would be. So the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions, and officers would also like to delegate the matter of ecological considerations as part of any, if the application were to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I've got Kieran Long, please, who's an objector. Oh, that's you, sir, right? Yep. Thank you. Microphone on, please. Keep pressing.
There you go.
Yep. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. The reasons for my objections are based along these bullet points. Mumford Village Hall was built to provide facilities for the local community and is located adjacent to the football pitch, with parking adjacent to that building. That building already has a large hall, a small hall, a bar area, a large kitchen, toilets and changing facilities. Why you need an additional football club pavilion when the existing village hall could be amended or extended for the benefit of the whole community rather than just the football club? The planned location is so far from the road it will deter other community users apart from the football club. Opening a new pavilion will have a detrimental effect on the use of the existing village hall. The proposed football pavilion doesn't have sufficient vehicle access for bin collection services, any deliveries or emergency vehicles, as it crosses through an area liable to flooding. The plans are positioned in the woodland conservation area where red kite and goshawks have been spotted, and is located within 50 metres of existing residential housing, which surprisingly are left off the original planning application plans. Why build next to an existing residential area, as this will undoubtedly lead to noise pollution when there is already an existing village hall in the ideal location? I've noted that the planning application has a bar area. Again, why does a village of the size of Mumford need another licensed bar when there are already 5 existing licensed premises which are open to everyone within 200 metres of the playing area? Further questions. What will happen to the original Village Hall building when the football club associates are no longer interested in being on the Village Hall committee once they've got their new plans? Who will pay for this white elephant of an old Village Hall to stay open? I can only presume it will come back to the taxpayers of Munford Village, which will be another tax burden placed on the residents during these difficult financial times. What will happen if the proposed football building isn't financially viable? A reason I ask this question is that I'm concerned as there is only one first-team player who lives within the parish or its surrounding villages, as most of the players are only there as they are being paid to play for Munford Football Club. Those people have no loyalty to Munford Village itself and are only there as football mercenaries. For all of these reasons stated, surely it makes sense to develop the existing hall. The development is not in the right location as it is in a conservation area, and that is why myself, other residents and the parish council object to this plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's now Nick Brown, who's on behalf of Munford Football Club, please. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. My name's Nick Brown. I'm the club welfare officer and a committee member at Munford Football Club. Munford Football Club would like to expand. We need a dedicated facility to do that. We have 7 current squads ranging from under-8s through to veterans. This includes ladies' footballs. Our current facility, which we use, which is the Village Hall, just isn't big enough. The changing rooms were built in the 80s when football squads were 12 players maximum. We now have 16 squad members and it's a real tight squeeze. In addition, when the changing room doors are actually open, the public can see in. They can see into the changing rooms and they can see into the showers, which is just not feasible in today's day and age. We have 2 small stool toilets, male, female. Again, sometimes we have a footfall of 80 to 150 people on match days, and with the pitch being 200 metres from those toilets, it does create problems. The siting applied for is because all other options were explored and they didn't come up to scratch. One of these was amalgamation with the cricket club. That was rejected out of hand by the cricket club. There was proposal put forward for a new build. That was rejected. Also, there was plans to increase the Village Hall, to increase the facilities at the Village Hall, but again, these proved fruitless simply because of the drainage system on one side of the Village Hall. It would have meant too much disruption to actually increase on that side. At the back of the Village Hall, it would encroach too far into the second football pitch. I'd like to just to address some of the concerns that have been raised. It will not be a social hub open 7 days a week. It'll only be used during match days and training evenings, which there are 2. Match days is generally finished by 6 o'clock. Everyone's gone home after matches finish, especially this time of year, early evening. With regard to flooding, there have been objections that sometimes it's knee-deep. This has never been the case that it's knee-deep flooding. If that was the case, all the houses backing onto the football pitch would have been flooded also. The last bad waterlogging we had was 3 seasons ago when we had continued frost for 3 or 4 nights, really hard frost, followed by heavy rain, which didn't allow it to drain away, and it remained soggy for about 2 weeks. But generally, if it was flooding prone, we wouldn't be able to play football there, which is quite logical. To combat any flooding, if there is waterlogging, the actual building will be raised up, so that wouldn't be an issue. But where it is sited, that's not really prone to flooding or waterlogging, as the planning officer has actually indicated. So I'd like to stop there and just thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members. Councillor Attawell.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. 3 quick questions. The fire access to this building, had the fire service been consulted about how they, if there's any footpath access, how would they get down to reach it? And also, if there's a bar, you're going to need deliveries. How are you going to get access down to the said premises for deliveries? And I think somebody already raised the subject of where is the rubbish bins going to be located? Are we expecting any rubbish from this site, the bins to be located up on the highway, or will the delivery, the refuse collection have to reach the site? And the third thing I want to ask is, can you just confirm that none of this is registered village green? Thank you.
So as a private operation, they won't be subject in the same way to housing operations to refuse collection, so they will need to privately arrange their refuse collection. So if they privately arrange it from the highway, that would be, as a private operation, down to them to arrange with a private operator, because they're not entitled to bin collections like housing is. We haven't consulted the fire service. This would be below the parameters for formal consultation with them. You know, as we well know, they will get a vehicle across if they need to. And I'm not sure what the village green is. It's defined open space. I'm not sure what you meant by the village green. Is that the same thing?
2 points. The fire service won't take a fire engine across the green. I met a fire officer on Friday to talk about local issues in my village. They will only go as far as the hard standing will allow them. They won't drive a fire tender across a field to reach any sort of premises or like that. And the reason I asked about village green is you can't build on anything that's registered village green, and you shouldn't be driving vehicles across village green. There's very strict parameters about what you can and cannot do with registered common and registered village greens. So that's quite important that we perhaps don't give permission for something that we had no business giving permission for in the first place.
That would be a civil matter, councillors, that's outside your remit for consideration. So you can only consider things that are subject. That would be a civil matter. The village green status, it wouldn't be a planning matter that you could take into consideration. So the fact that they can't do it would be a legal matter between them and the village land ownership, not a matter for you to consider as part of the planning authority. You can't consider matters where legally they are and allowed to do something. You can only consider something that either complies with policy or doesn't comply with policy. Thank you.
Oh. To the fire. Oh, did we answer the fire one? I thought you did.
Well, the fire regulations will be covered as part of the building regulations, and the vehicle does obviously have hoses on them to take to the, you know, again, I don't consider that that is a material consideration. That will be for the building regulations to assess whether they have suitable fire escape, etc., as part of their detailed design for building regulations.
Councillor Harvey.
Working on. Is that on, yeah? Right, thank you. I'm really pleased to see a village side like Mumford growing. It's grown from a very small club when I used to play over there years and years ago. To what it is. But my question regards the emergency vehicles again. What happens if you have an injury at football? How will an ambulance get across? Because we know what happens, knees, legs, ankles, etc. Get out.
In the past, we have had a fatality and broken legs on the pitch, and the ambulances have driven straight down to the pitch.
Sorry. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think we're losing sight of the fact that the football pitch is staying in the same place. We're just putting the facility a little bit nearer to it than actually. And I applaud the football club for actually wanting to go, I suppose, up the league a little bit. And I think probably some of the things that they put in place in this particular building, like referees, changing rooms, are part and parcel of the regulations they have to adhere to actually go up in the league. So I applaud that. I will say that I think Norfolk Fire and Rescue Service do have 4x4 vehicles now, rather than dirty great big things with loads of water on them, which can relay hoses across. So I think there's probably no problem with that.
Okay, any further questions, members? If not, I'll take the vote. No. Okay, thank you very much. So on this item at Munford, application 3PL 2023-0161, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. This item is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much. So that's it.
No, you 2 items at the end.
I know. I'm just saying these gentlemen can go.
Sorry.
Okay, we've done our schedule of applications for today. So our next item is item 10, which is applications that are determined by the Deputy Chief Executive. Those are noted, those are there for your information. And item 11 is the appeal summary, also there for your information. At which point I close this meeting. Thank you.